75 gallons of rainwater storage, removed 325 square feet of grass, and used a rebate to replace his high-flow toilet and fixtures with high-efficiency ones. His actions save about 9,000 gallons of water annually.
Good afternoon. I'd like to ask the interpreter currently on the Spanish channel to commence interpretation of the meeting. For those just joining the meeting, live interpretation in Spanish is available, and members of the public or staff wishing to listen in Spanish can join the Spanish channel by clicking on the interpretation icon in the Zoom toolbar. It looks like a globe. If you are on your cell phone or tablet, locate the three dots, tap them lightly, and put a check mark on your preferred language. Click Done to activate and begin the interpretation. Once you join the Spanish channel, we recommend you shut off the main audio so you only hear the Spanish interpretation. Claudia, will you please restate this in Spanish?
Yes. Buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos. Los servicios de interpretación en español van a estar disponibles el día de hoy de una manera simultánea. Se les invita a tener acceso a ese canal. En la parte inferior de su pantalla ustedes van a notar un globo terráqueo o un símbolo de mundo. Si pueden hacer un clic, por favor, en ese icono y se les va a proporcionar la opción de elegir el inglés o el español. A favor de elegir el español, pueden hacer un clic. Inmediatamente pueden disfrutar de esta junta de una manera simultánea. Ahora, si tienen acceso a esta junta, ya sea por su celular, tableta, iPad, ustedes pueden localizar tres puntitos, ya sea en la parte superior o inferior de su pantalla a mano derecha. Abajo de ellos, ustedes van a notar una palabra que dice más o more. Favor de hacer un clic en ella. Y de nuevo se les va a lanzar el globo terráqueo. Favor de elegir el idioma de español. Y después de seleccionarlo, necesitan hacer un clic donde dice la palabra finalizar o done. Va a ser muy importante que hagan este último paso para que puedan disfrutar de esta junta. Muchas gracias. Estamos a sus órdenes. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Happy New Year, folks, and welcome back. All right, Madam City Clerk, well, I guess the time is 2:32. We can call this meeting to order. Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Rogers is absent. Councilmember McDonald is absent. Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Benuelos. Here. Councilmember Alvarez.
Present.
Vice Mayor Okrepke.
Here.
Mayor Stapp.
Here.
Let the record show that all council members are present with the exception of council members McDonald and Rogers.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 3.1, our conference with the real property negotiator, which will take place in closed session. Before we go into closed session, though, are there any members of the public here who wish to comment? Seeing none, we will close public comment and recess into closed session. Thanks for your patience, everyone, and happy New Year to all the folks who have come for this item. Thank you very much for coming out. We will reconvene into open session. Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Rogers is absent. Councilmember McDonald is absent. Councilmember Fleming is absent. Councilmember Banuelos? Here. Councilmember Alvarez?
Present.
Vice Mayor Okrepke?
Here.
Mayor Stapp?
Here.
Let the record show that all council members are present with the exception of council members Fleming, McDonald, and Rogers.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to our study session for the evening, item 4.1, which concerns gas station land use regulations. Ms. Jones and Mr. Osborne. Welcome to both of you.
Good afternoon, Mayor Stapp, members of the council. I am Jessica Jones, Deputy Director of Planning, and with me is Gabe Osborne, Director of Planning and Economic Development. So we are here today to do a study session with the council on gas station land use regulations. So we will be going over some of the background, some initial research and findings that we have done to prepare for the study session, and then we will be going over our prior regulations as well as the existing regulations for gas stations, and then some potential options for council to consider along with some potential impacts with those options. So as a reminder for council, in January of 2020, the City Council adopted a resolution that declared a climate emergency and elevated climate issues to the highest priority. The climate emergency resolution committed the city to taking action to mitigate, draw down, and take adaptive measures to reach carbon neutrality by 2030. Sonoma County's 9 incorporated cities, as well as the County of Sonoma, have adopted similar climate resolutions. Then in September of 2021, the Regional Climate Protection Authority, known as RCPA, adopted a resolution that recommended that the county and the incorporated jurisdictions within the county cease acceptance of all applications for new gas stations and expansion of existing gas stations and their infrastructure in each jurisdiction. In September of 2022, the City Council adopted an ordinance that amended our zoning code to prohibit new gas station land uses and expansion of existing gas stations and fossil fuel infrastructure. It included some language that existing projects that were deemed complete prior to the effective date of that ordinance could continue through the process. There were 2 such applications that were in, one of which was a 7-Eleven on Highway 12, which was ultimately withdrawn, and the other was the Elm Tree Station project, which council approved on appeal in 2025. And then in June of 2025, council moved to add a future agenda item to discuss potential changes to the zoning code addressing gas station modifications, which is why we are here today. So this slide, we've got 2 charts here that show comparisons of jurisdictions that we have done in preparation for this study session, really looking to see what other jurisdictions, both here in Sonoma County as well as in the greater Bay Area, and a few beyond, what they have done with regard to gas station regulations. So as you can see on the left-hand side here, these are all of the Sonoma County jurisdictions, and all of them, including the county, with the exception of 3, have adopted gas station regulations that prohibit new gas stations as well as expansion of existing. The 3 that have not are Cloverdale, Healdsburg, and the City of Sonoma. And of those 3, the City of Sonoma is the only one that is currently looking at pursuing an ordinance to ban both new gas stations as well as expansion of existing. On the right-hand side is some of other jurisdictions that we looked at through the Bay Area, and again, a little bit beyond the Bay Area. We've got Sacramento and Los Angeles included in here, and none of these jurisdictions are currently banning new gas stations or expansion of existing. So this gas station map shows the location of existing stations, and this is came from a website called Gas Station Buddy, I think it is. Anyway, we've reviewed this in consultation with some of the business license information that we have. We think this is fairly accurate. It shows 44 stations within the city of Santa Rosa. 13 of those are in northwest Santa Rosa, 16 are in northeast. We have 7 stations currently in southwest. 1 is currently approved, and that's the Elm Tree Station, and then 8 in southeast Santa Rosa. So I'm going to hand it over to Director Osborne for the next 3 slides.
Thank you, Jessica, and good afternoon, Mayor and Vice Mayor. The next few slides will give you a snapshot of what we've seen in the gasoline distribution industry within the city over a period of time. We do not see a number of gas station applications come through on a regular basis. It's actually fairly uncommon. So what we looked back at is really the last almost 30 years and the types of applications and where that we've seen come through the system. So we have seen back in 1996, Mendocino Avenue, that's a bit of a unique situation. That was an existing gas station that when Safeway occupied that site in the early 2000s, rebranded and took over that gas station. We saw in 1990, Costco added gas and then extended the pumps in 2014. That would constitute a new gas station since it did not exist in that location. In 1997, in Bennett Valley Road, we saw a Chevron move forward. This is probably the most common request. It was a gas station replacing an existing gas station. Through that process, the gas station can do something as minor as rebranding, which would be paint and signage, but quite often it's a full scrape of the site and a redevelopment. From a policy standpoint, oftentimes that either constitutes a new gas station or it must meet the requirements of an expansion of an existing gas station under the regulation. So it can be a bit limiting under the current policy. On 2012, we saw on Farmers Lane a similar occurrence occur where it was a replacement of existing gas station, and then we saw that again in 2018 on 255 Dutton Avenue. The most recent new gas station, as Ms. Jones mentioned, is Elm Tree Station. The entitlement was approved for that recently. It is yet to be seen if that goes through permitting into construction, but that would be the first new gas station the city has seen in quite some time. So really, the themes that we see is there does not seem to be a significant demand for an increased distribution that the gas station industry is responding to. Most of the relocations of gas stations are very strategic locations, oftentimes located on major highways or major intersections. The one unique aspect that we have seen is a transition from retailers that are not typically in the fuel business to the fuel business as a secondary measure of increasing revenue on the site. The most common really are the warehouse sites that have taken on gasoline. We have seen grocers do that as well. And we have also seen traditional smaller markets where they're now incorporating gasoline. And that has started as really an optional for some of these businesses, but it's been so ingrained in their revenue picture that they actually require it as part of new locations. So as part of expansion, it becomes very critical. Now, the challenge we've run into with some of that, because we have seen it, is when it is a new development, it is very easy to incorporate that in. Oftentimes, the appropriate acreage is looked at for queuing, for making sure that traffic impacts are not created. When it's added to an existing use, it becomes a little harder to do that because the area that the firm is working with. And what we've seen with some of these uses as well is they offer gasoline at a price that becomes very attractive, so they draw a significant amount of traffic to them, and they can create more localized impacts. And that's something as we see this move forward that we want to really just be mindful of from a policy standpoint, as that wouldn't necessarily be a new gas station. It really just needs to potentially be solutions to make sure that traffic impacts are mitigated and more localized impacts are mitigated through creative approaches. And looking at the future, the consumer is very price-driven in many situations and very convenience-driven. So as those uses provide that, it can be more of a draw in the future. So really just wanted to point out that theme. So the next slide looks at EV sales, because obviously this is a big picture to transitioning away from the burning of fossil fuels for transportation purposes. So this information comes from the California Energy Commission. And it's really focusing on light-duty vehicles. Outside of traditional fleet, most EVs have focused on light-duty. That's generally a vehicle of 8,500 pounds or less. There's different definitions floating around. If we look at pickup trucks, when pickup truck goes to a heavy-duty, that's not in this category, so smaller pickup trucks are in this category as well. In 2021, saw quite a bit of EV sales move forward. Bear with us, I know some of this is fairly small. I'll point out some of the key numbers. ZEV is zero emission vehicles, and that is typically electric. And really what we saw in 2021, obviously with the pandemic, supply chain issues were changing. There was a significant amount of transition to electric vehicle that happened through that. And we saw it really start to jump up. So at that point, EV sales were grabbing 14% of the new vehicle sales in the county. So this is county-specific information. The total number of sales was around 16,000. Although the sales dropped in 2022 for the total number, we saw the percentage grow. So it was more of a shift to electric. And we generally saw that increase year after year. So 2023, we saw the numbers jump up. We saw it grab around 24% of that market. Jumped up to 24%, 25% in 2024, 25. One of the concerns of what we're seeing is much of that as EV vehicles have a tendency to be more expensive than their gas-powered counterpart. The rebates associated with electrical vehicles and the federal administration's response to those rebates become a little problematic in understanding what the sales of EVs look like moving forward. We did look at some of those trends outside of the county, and the 20 to 25% seems fairly consistent as to where EVs are settling at their market share. But this is really a critical, important point to understand, not necessarily new gas distribution, but how we potentially can move off that existing supply and transition away to fossil fuel burning to alternate fuel sources. Next slide, please. This really comes from our mobile analytic data. What we wanted to really do is try to just see how many trips we were seeing to fueling stations. I do have to basically state that mobile analytics are not an exact science. What they utilize is cell phone data to understand human behavior and where they go at various places. So what that helps us understand is when there is convenience buying, oftentimes we will see people go to a location for something and then shop around that general perimeter, which is often constitutes convenience buying, but it also gives us a good idea if we're seeing major drops at various businesses or uses. And what we have seen for gasoline sales is they've held pretty steady, or trips, I should say. So we had about 11,000 in 2021, and this would constitute all the fuel cell uses within the city. It jumped up in 2022 to 13,000, held at 13,000, and it seems fairly consistent. So once again, this seems to show a pattern of not necessarily an increase in consumption, fairly consistent trips over the years. We did not see a dramatic drop with the EV market taking over, but that obviously somewhere in the scenes is playing into that because that is grabbing 25% of that new market share. Now that's obviously the new vehicles being purchased. That doesn't focus on used car sales or how that's moving through. But it's important to note that's at 25%. This isn't really describing a compelling argument either way over that behavior other than it's staying fairly steady. And with that, I'll hand the presentation back to Ms. Jones.
All right, thank you. So the prior gas station regulations, as the council will remember, included allowance for new gas stations as well as expansion and relocation of existing gas stations with the approval of a major conditional use permit in all of our commercial zoning districts with the exception of our core mixed use, which is generally the downtown area, as well as our light and heavy industrial zoning districts. With that conditional use permit, there were additional specific regulations for the location and operation of gas stations, and those included minimum lot area and dimensions, a prohibition for new gas stations located adjacent to residential zoning districts as well as land uses, and then a requirement for a minimum of 500-foot setback between gas stations unless they were located within 150 feet of an intersection with Highway 101 and Freeway 12. So as for the current gas station regulations, so no new gas stations are allowed within any of our zoning districts. The expansion of and relocation of gas stations are also prohibited. There is an allowance for some minor modifications, which are outlined on this slide here. So with a minor use permit, gas stations can be modified only to improve air, soil, groundwater, and stormwater quality, to provide improvements for traffic safety, or to provide battery charging stations. So what we have on this slide are some potential options for the council to consider through this study session. The first would be no changes to our existing regulations, keep them status quo. The second potential option would be to revert back to the prior regulations that would allow for new expansion and relocation in those commercial and industrial zones. And then the third would be amending the existing gas station regulations. We've got two potential examples here. One would be for expansion of existing stations that could include limitations on the number of pumps, requirements for mitigation measures, and any other requirements that council wanted to see. And then potential for relocation of existing gas stations, which could include limitations on locations, requirements for mitigation or remediation, or any other requirements. And then it could be any combination thereof with potential amendments. With those options, there would be some impacts if the council were to choose option B or C, or if the council didn't choose either and the city received a request for an amendment to our code from an outside party. What this would look like would be, there would be impacts to existing work items that we're currently working on. We have a lot of policy and development projects that are currently in the queue. And depending on, where the priority lands with this type of a project would determine whether there might be a delay to any existing work that we're doing. There could also be potential budget implications to allow for allocation of funding for consultant services to assist staff with the technical analysis and potential environmental review. And then as far as timeline is concerned, if this would be prioritized, we likely would be looking at about a 6 to 12 month process. That would depend on the level of environmental review that would be needed, as well as outreach to the community. One thing to be aware of is that we did reach out to PlaceWorks, which is the consultant that prepared the general plan amendment, and also the greenhouse gas emission reduction strategy that was the council adopted recently. Asked them about potential impacts to the strategy if an item like this were to move forward. They did indicate that the GHG reduction strategy did not evaluate the impact of the current gas station regulations. Because of that, there likely would not be an effect or require a change to the analysis of our general plan EIR. And while actual construction activities for any new gas stations or relocation would be subject to project level environmental review, there likely wouldn't be an issue with compliance if the council wanted to move forward with a change like this. So those are some of the impacts to those options. So with that, it's recommended by the Planning and Economic Development Department that the council hold this study session and provide direction to staff related to the current gas station land use regulations. And we are both here for any questions.
Thank you both for putting this together. Before I bring it back to my colleagues for a round of questions, it might be helpful to have a bit of other context, especially because I know that there are we know that there are any number of interested people around the county in this issue. When Santa Rosa and other municipalities in the county went through the gas station ban process 4 years ago or so, it was a point of pride for the community, not only for our city, but for Sonoma County, and a point of pride for those of us on the dais. So let's underline that right at the start. If you've been paying close attention to our city council meetings through the course of the last year, what you will notice is that we have, on a few occasions, brought back some of our ordinances or some of our internal guidelines to look at them sometimes even as basic as how we're conducting meetings or how we're handling our consent calendar, with the idea that we're looking at the protocols that we have in place, the ordinances that we have in place to say, are these serving us now in the way that we expected to serve them when we put them into place? My hope is that this continues indefinitely, but certainly through the course of the next year, where we look at additional policies that, again, were put in place at some point in the past, and now we want to look at those again to say, are they accomplishing what we hoped what we wanted them to accomplish, in which case great, or are there ways that we can tweak them so that we can still accomplish whatever that goal was, but do so more efficiently or not make the trade-offs that they led us to. So I want to have that in the back of people's minds as we're having the study session today, and underlining the fact that we're having a study session. No concrete decisions will be made, but we do want to look at how we crafted this ordinance, how other municipalities crafted this ordinance a few years ago, and discuss whether that's accomplished what we wanted to accomplish and whether there are any ways that we can tweak it and make it better. So that's the context, at least in my mind. And with that, I'm going to bring it to council for questions. We'll start with questions, by the way.
Well, I do feel that it's appropriate if you're going to make such a grand statement about how we frame this. I would like to just respond and
frame away. And you were here when this ordinance went into place. Frame away.
This was a big deal and something that I know that Councilmember Alvarez and I, the rest of the council, were so proud of getting done. And it's our goal to make sure that the greenhouse gas emissions that the council permits going forward are in line with our climate goals. And I just think to that end, I think I'd be cautious about wrapping potential expansion of infrastructure in the guise of process improvement. I think that it's potential for process improvements all over the board, but I just think that's a dubious framing. So I hope that we move forward and hear this on its merits.
Mr. Alvarez, did you want to add to that?
No, I completely agree with everything that was just stated. And in fact, when we speak about expansion or additions of new gasoline stations, I think it goes contrary to what we promised the people of Santa Rosa a couple years ago. So I'm definitely very weary of touching this at all. I think the only reason that I would even take a look at this is to see how we can better improve the stations that exist currently, opposed to addition or expansions.
Questions from others on council? Ms. Benuelos?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple questions. Thank you for the presentation. It was pretty informative. I just wondered, when I was looking at the list of approved gas stations between 1996 and 2025, is that a complete list? Because I think I remember when I was on the Planning Commission that we approved also a gas station on the corner of Summerfield. And I don't know if it was an improved gas station, or it was a new company that was taking over. I don't remember the details, but I do remember that, and it just made me wonder if this was a complete list.
We believe that it is a complete list. This was a quick analysis of our permit tracking system. So I worked with our IT staff to come up with this. I'm not recalling one on Summerfield, but it very well could be. So certainly, we can go back and relook at this, but we believe that this is relatively accurate.
Okay. And then the other thing I was wondering about on I don't know what page this is. Oh, page 6 of the slides. Just wondering if you could talk a little bit more, Gabe, about the numbers. I know you said it wasn't a scientific, the data is not scientific, but I was just sort of interpreting it differently when I looked at 2021, where we started at 11, and then 2025, which is at 12. And I guess when I look at those numbers, I think, oh, okay, we started at a certain point in 2021. Then the visits really increased in 22, 23, and 24, but then they started to come back down. So the way I look at that is that's the direction we want to move in. And I understand some of these are, convenience stores, but that's not all. And so anyway, I just wondered if you would talk a little bit more about how you found those numbers and what you think they mean.
Yes, absolutely, Council Member. I think it's important to have a brief conversation about how mobile analytics work. So really what that is using cell phone data to understand, based on location services, where people are going and when they're going there. And obviously that technology is evolving. It's becoming more accurate. So there's some inconsistencies as you go back in time just with the data platform. Now, when we look at the distribution or the amount of gasoline sales, it's really critical to understand human behavior. So as we got out of the pandemic, actually fossil fuel burning was less because there were more remote work options, commuting was less, so vehicle miles traveled were down a bit. So when we look at trip generation, that's a really critical component. When we build new housing units, where do people work? Are they commuting? And really understanding those patterns, because that will really control the trips to gasoline stations because people are fueling up more consistently. Now, I think where some of the other inaccuracies can come into when you're tracking data, if two people are sitting in a car and both those cars have location services, we don't necessarily know when we're using location data as to whether that's a 2 count or a 1 count for one fueling option. So it isn't necessarily an exact science. What I have seen on the economic development front, when we can see significant deviation, so a 50% reduction of a number, it is usually pretty telling, and that's usually an avenue where we dig in. So we want to use this more because it is a tool in the toolbox to better understand human behavior, because very much this is an action of human behavior. And if people are still buying gas-powered vehicles and filling those, where are they doing that at? And trying to understand the patterns, really trying to understand why one would go to an electric vehicle if they're more expensive, understanding how critical are EV charging stations in that decision-making process. So there's a lot really to figure out. So we're looking at patterns, we're looking at trend lines, and I think part of this from a climate action standpoint, which this is a really critical piece to that, is really understanding where we can make the biggest impact from a policy standpoint when that all fleshes out. And I know that was a long way of answering your question, but what we're really focusing on, we know there was some trend changes with the pandemic. We know as we increase housing units, we're potentially changing demographics of the community. We're trying to understand what people do, either live locally or commute, so it really becomes a vehicle miles traveled connection, and then understanding how that factors into trips to the fueling stations. But really, the cell phone data is getting better by the day, but it still has some inaccuracies in that system, and it's not a perfect science. So when I alluded to that, that's really what it's focusing back on, and the platform is not exact.
I think that those are all the questions that I have at this point.
Mr. Okrepke.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. I wanted to ask a couple questions about some of the information you've provided here. And it's not lost on me that you may not have some of these answers, and that there may be, as some of our questions are presented, you may have to come back with more pointed answers or opportunities or solutions or whatever it might be. So feel free to say, I don't know, and you know how we can venture forward with, through that. But with the gas stations we do have, are there any age triggers for infrastructure changes? Like if they put a tank in the ground, like after so long, do they have to update it? Do they, I'm seeing heads nodding back and forth.
Yes, absolutely. We have Paul Lowenthal here today to assist from our fire department. He can talk about the permitting process and what sort of frequency upgrades are needed at existing facilities.
Good afternoon, Mayor Stapp, members of the council. My name is Paul Lowenthal, Division Chief Fire Marshal with the Santa Rosa Fire Department. Yes, the Santa Rosa Fire Department is what we refer to as a CUPA, a Certified Unified Program Agency, and we are a fire-based CUPA. And one of our responsibilities is the oversight of underground storage tanks, which we typically will see at gas stations. And so we do regularly regulate the gas stations. They're one of the most stringently regulated facilities that we have in the city. But to your point, yes, as times change, regulations change, and sometimes that requires the tanks to be pulled out of the ground. That is one of the things that's occurring in Santa Rosa right now, is a lot of our gas stations that we have permitted have done the upgrades where they've removed what we refer to as single wall tanks that were more prone to leaking and replacing them with double wall tanks. Santa Rosa has successfully removed every single non-compliant single wall tank in the city with the exception of one. And it's actually not associated with a gas station, it's associated with a generator at Memorial Hospital. That is actually an enforcement case that we have underway with the state right now, but typically we do see our gas stations looking to proactively, in many cases, upgrade sensors, do replacements of underground components to ensure they're in compliance with current requirements.
Thank you. When there's updates, it'd be natural to understand, or it'd be natural to think that whether it's a cell phone or a vehicle of any kind, the newer it is, the more efficient it is in any way, shape, or form. Do we have any information as to if newer pumps go in, what kind of emissions those may cause or anything like that?
I would say we don't at this time, but certainly that's something that we could provide the council in the future.
Okay. I'd be interested in that. Let's see. Oh, excuse me. You looked at adoption of, oh, that was the other thing I was going to say. Do we have any information as to what idling, let's say there's 2 pumps versus 4 pumps, and you have 10 cars. With the idling to get to the 2 versus the idling to get to the 4, what kind of emissions comparatively those are?
That's something as well, and I think that's a really important point because that has to do often with the configuration of the gas station and the idling and the demand. As far as specific numbers, that's something that we'll have to come back with. When looking at expansion of pumps, there's a difference between expansion of pumps and expansion of tank size, and usually that goes hand in hand. Tank size suggests you're selling more product. The expansion of pumps, it's really what we saw with Costco as they transitioned. A lot of that was meant to meet demand, but it was also meant to meet idling and traffic impacts. So generally, it's once again human behavior. What we often see is people do run the vehicle idling in waiting lines for drive-throughs and gas. Not everyone, but a lot of that, there is sort of average numbers we can come back to the council with on the length of queuing lines, the number of vehicles. It's obviously based on the time you're waiting, so there's quite a few factors that go into the mathematical equation, but we're happy to do a deeper dive in that and bring back some more formal numbers to the council.
Okay. One thing I would also be interested in is to see if there's any sort of EV charging or solar or clean energy offsets that would be viable, if at all. So if you were to, for example, put one new pump in, if there's any sort of project that could offset that, is that possible to get that kind of information back?
Yeah, absolutely. We did some preliminary research on that. I think that's really an important point when we look at the expansion of EV, and when we look at, as the city is looking at master planning both internally and externally for that, it's important to not only understand the location, but also how do you create either the incentive or the requirement to make it happen. What jurisdictions that have explored options for gas station bans have looked at is a mitigation strategy for electric vehicle charging. So for example, for every pump of gasoline, do you do 2 electrical vehicle charging stations at that location or other locations, or do you have a funding strategy where it's an in-lieu fee? So that's actually a fairly common connection to try to drive more accessibility to EV charging. So if there is a desire at the council to look at more of a mitigation strategy for changes to an existing gas station, we can absolutely look at what that would look like and bring forward options to the council.
Yeah, that would perfectly segues into what would have been my next question, which is going into a little bit more detail on what a mitigation fund would look like, what some opportunities for that, whether it be on-site mitigation versus paying for chargers to go into multifamily housing or anything like that. So I'd also like to see that, unless you have any other information you want to provide right now.
I think to add to that, I have seen flexibility on how those mitigation fees can be utilized. And a mitigation strategy is either the applicant or the developer builds the mitigation, or the applicant or the developer pays an in-lieu fee for the mitigation, and that in-lieu fee is then used by either other development to mitigate in close proximity, or it's used by the local jurisdiction. I think from a carbon neutrality standpoint, one of the biggest issue, and Ms. Jones can correct me if this is a little off on that statement, but if we really look at vehicles miles traveled, that's the biggest impact. Building efficiency is a close second. So building efficiency through codes and those sort of things requiring solar, there's ways in which we can improve that building stock, but really looking at incentives for convincing people to purchase electric vehicles, making them more accessible to more members of the community, figuring out that charging, if that's the reason, is an important piece. So I think from a mitigation strategy, understanding how we can look at electrification and understanding as part of that process, what is the most important thing to fund. I usually recommend that flexibility and mitigation is important because that may change with time. So just understanding the importance of mitigation from a financial standpoint and putting it to where it's best used to the community to solve the problem. But there typically is the flexibility from what I've seen and what other jurisdictions have adopted.
All right, and then my last thing, which, I mean, to me is one of, if not the most important things, is I'd like you to come back with some information, considering the removal of tax credits, of rebates, incentives, the NEVI program at the federal level. The cost of EV has gone up. There's other things you can throw in there if you want to throw in like tariffs or whatever else. I would like to see some more information about that, about adoption of that, to see if it, really is becoming affordable to adopt that lifestyle. Because we could also pull things into installing an at-home charger or solar to offset that, those types of things. I'd really like to see that. Because one of the other things, as I say that, I'd like to see that sort of information. And also with that, if there's any sort of idea of setback, of adoption at the federal level, right? Like with all of these things going away, if it's actually taken us back, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years in the timeline to where we want to be not only as a nation, but as a community. I'd like to see that, because one of the things I would be interested in is seeing if there's a possibility for anything like equity triggers, where if we see a certain level of adoption, then automatic triggers for restriction take place, so that we don't have to come back, but basically say like, hey, once we hit a certain percent of adoption or a certain level of reduced station trips, then we can start implementing these things automatically. I think I'd like to see more information about that. I have.
Ms. Fleming.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I was just curious if you could go back to the slide where there were the gas station trips. So when I look at this slide, it'd be so nice if we had like 2019 data up here, because I think that's actually our baseline, not 2021. But I would probably hazard a guess that there was probably around 13 million trips in 2019. That's my best guess from there. But what I think is so interesting about this is that, and I would just disagree with that we haven't had a decrease. 12.8 million trips off of, in 2023, 13.1, it's 400,000 about less trips a year. If we lost 400,000 gas trips every 2 years, pretty soon we'd be in like a lot fewer gas trips. And I just think that this slide doesn't lend us a whole lot of data on that count. So I am curious to know if we've considered, like with highway widening, when you add a lane to a highway, people are more likely to get into their cars. And that's one of the reasons why the state of California doesn't like to give grants to road expansion projects that don't include multimodal uses. So I'm just curious to know if anything has been looked at this. When you add gas station infrastructure, does that make people any more likely to use gas-powered vehicles? And I think that question is probably a little bit out of your scope, but I would just caution us to keep in mind that the more readily available and easy something is to access, people like to do the thing that's easy, and that's understandable.
Good questions by all. Just a quick note on that slide. It occurred to me that actually the city's population and the county's population, unfortunately, were declining through all those years until maybe 2025, when hopefully we bottomed out. So it's interesting to see. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of noise in that data, but even as the city's population declines to some extent, that the gas station visits remain similar. Back to, I certainly don't want to come across as disingenuous. Thank you for Ms. Fleming for calling me out. Let me add a bit more context. So first of all, my wife and I have been all EV for more than 10 years now. We've got the chargers, we've got the cars, we can afford to do that. We love it. We're never gonna buy a gas vehicle again. We're never gonna visit a gas station, knock on wood. Having said that, though, I think everyone's seen the larger context of this. In the city's economic development efforts, which have been quite vibrant over the last 18 months or so, I'm proud to say, we've gotten direct feedback from retailers nationally that Santa Rosa and Sonoma County stand out. Kudos to us. But as the slide in this presentation indicated, other people since 2022 have not followed the lead. In fact, one question I had is, are you aware of any other municipality across the U.S. over the past 3+ years that has followed Sonoma County's and the North Bay's lead with respect to banning gas stations?
Not that we're aware of. Really, locally, a lot of this started with Petaluma. We did focus mostly on the Bay Area. We focused quite a bit on our comparative agencies and partners close by. As you start heading to Southern California, you start finding that LA has entertained concepts of this. So the concept is not foreign. Looking at options to bake it into general plans is not foreign. Much of those, from what I've seen, work back to more of an incentive-based, but still don't have the restriction of prohibiting. So we really kept it more of a California analysis to understand what it looks like more in our general region, but also in our state. We're happy to expand that effort out to see where this is catching on in other places and work with our partners in those areas to better understand how they're navigating through it. So that's something we would probably have to come back with if we want to expand that search out a bit further.
That's one data point I'd like, because again, we can all be, especially my two colleagues here who worked on this initiative, we can be proud of the fact that the North Bay put itself out there, not just Santa Rosa, but other cities as well. I suspect that when those conversations were had at that time, the expectation was that we were riding a wave that was going to break across the rest of the nation and that other municipalities were going to follow. Here we are a few years later, and they haven't followed, and that's at least a data point that we should think about, because then the second item that has hit the headlines nationwide, as my colleague Mr. Okrepke mentioned, is that the funding landscape around electrification has changed. Obviously, with respect to private vehicles, but even here at the city, we've seen it in terms of electric bus procurement, for example, right? And the federal grant availability. It's a different landscape now than it was in 2022. And so putting these together, I think it's at least fair for the city to look at the ordinance and say, is this doing what we want it to do? And the answer may well be yes. I am not a strong opponent of the gas station ban, but I think it's fair to ask, is this serving our residents? And a lot of the questions that we've had today have nudged around that point. More specifically, and Gabe, you went through this a couple of times, but talk me through it again. In terms of the metric that we use to evaluate the success of this policy, of the limitation of gas stations, is it a decline in greenhouse gases? Is it a limitation of brownfield sites? What's the metric to determine or to indicate that we are doing something that's healthy for the environment?
Thank you, Mayor, for that question. I think it's really both, and that's really an important point with the expansion of gas stations. As Mr. Lowenthal had mentioned, there's quite a bit of regulations to address the safety issue, but and the concept of brownfields really focuses on a lot of the relics and older systems that we've had in place that weren't heavily regulated that we now have to deal with, but it also does increase risk. So as you add that, there's more environmental risk by the expansion of gas stations. So by shrinking that down to avoiding those, you're really addressing those additional risks from an environmental standpoint in communities. So I think that's really sort of a clear goal of what the policy tried to focus on. Now, the other aspect is really understanding that if we do shift to full electrification and the community does adopt EVs as the model moving forward, that gas stations are no longer needed. right? So there's this logical that it really becomes a bit of its own relic in the fact that it's a product that no longer sells. So from really a staffing standpoint, why are we investing time and resources in supporting that? That really plays into it. But I think the challenge, what we're all talking about, is it's really understanding a lot of different factors that are can come together to create that. So as it currently stands, it is a product that the community is using. What we really want to be mindful too is supply and demand and price, and how from an economic development strategy we keep sales within the community. And I know from a policy standpoint, oftentimes there are really more important goals to that from a health and safety standpoint, but when we look at it from economics, we have a lot of money bleeding out of our trade market. So how do we keep that in? And that's those retail uses. And by reducing gasoline in certain areas, because convenience buying is important, and to Councilmember Fleming's point, when highways are widened and people are moving more on the highways, and all of a sudden that changes, behavior patterns as far as sales go, that's something that we really factor into this as well. But I think from a carbon neutrality standpoint, electrification has always been looked at is reducing vehicle miles traveled from a carbon emission standpoint. So by using electric vehicles, that is a very critical component to doing that. So this becomes a companion to that exercise. I think the really important point is how do we develop the metrics to determine success or failure of any policy? And this is an interesting one because of the behavior points. So those are certainly, as we come back, as we can build in more metrics and understanding, to Vice Mayor's point, how are there thresholds in that? We can do a bit of a deeper dive to understand that. But I think just because of the behavioral aspect and very much economic-driven decisions that people often have a tendency to make, it's difficult to understand how we can transition. And as those life rafts reduce themselves from a financial standpoint, it just becomes that much harder because the manufacturers adjust. They're moving back and forth. A lot of models are falling off from EV and coming back. So I think a lot of the auto manufacturers are trying to address to what they perceive in many situations as a bit of a volatile market with everything going on right now. So it'd be very interesting to see what the trend lines look like over the next 5 years.
Agreed. We just bought a new EV. It is a volatile market. All right, you've gone over this too, but just so I'm clear, vehicle miles traveled is really the metric to focus on with respect to availability of gas stations, as opposed to, say, a per capita measurement. Is that accurate?
I would say that's an accurate statement because that affects the amount of fuel one is consuming.
Okay. All right. That's all for my questions. Anything else from my colleagues? Mr. Krepke?
When we're talking about the size of Santa Rosa, I think we've seen in past presentations, roughly the rough numbers, the size of Santa Rosa right now is 180,000, correct? Give or take?
Approximately, yes.
But during the workday, we swell to over 300,000 within about 5 miles of downtown?
That is correct.
So when we're talking about vehicles miles traveled, and we're talking about the usage of fuel, presumably if we only have 180,000 people that live here, those other 150,000 are coming from somewhere else. And so I'd be interested to see more information on, and this may have to come from our economic development arm, on the population that is commuting into Santa Rosa, why they're commuting into Santa Rosa, what kind of jobs, if we can get as granular as income level, I would be very interested to see that as well.
All right, thank you all. And I know we've got interested members of the public here. Why don't we move to public comment? If you're a member of the public and would like to comment on this item, make your way to one of either of the podiums, and feel free to put in your name, and we'll go back and forth between the podiums. All right, Fred, you can kick us off.
Thank you very much. This is a very interesting conversation, a great staff report, and makes me proud to be from Santa Rosa and California. My own personal behavior is that I go for price. And so it wouldn't matter for me if there's a new gas station somewhere because I'm going to go to find the cheapest price. And so I also don't want to wait in line forever. So I end up going to the Gulf Station on Melita and Highway 12, which is comparable to Costco, and there's people having to wait in line there. So that's what I do. And let's see. So it doesn't look to me now that the current use and demand calls for a new station. I'm not really in a position to buy an EV because I still have, my truck still works, and I still have sunken carbon cost in my truck. So if I was to sell it and buy an EV, that would waste all that carbon cost that it took to make my truck. And also, I'm really not anxious to buy a new vehicle because I think that newer stuff is cheap, and I don't want to have all of the stuff tracking me, whatever I do. So there's some reluctance to get an EV because of that. I think, in part of your calculation here, I know Santa Rosa is looking at adding thousands of new housing units, and downtown and also through the South Santa Rosa specific plan. And as long as the population of Santa Rosa is approximately 35 or 40% disadvantaged community, which means their annual income is 80% of state household median household income and less, then those people aren't really in a position to buy an EV, especially if the prices are going up. And the people who are commuting in are people who maybe can't afford to live here. So I think that's something that should be taken into account as a metric, is that's like an economic fact on the ground rather than something that you would track, that you can look in through the census to see how people's annual income are. So that's generally the gist of what I had to say. I think it's a really interesting conversation, and what I would suggest would be to allow the modification of gas stations given the metrics that's already been discussed. So if you have a population of people who have a lower annual income and EVs are still expensive, and it turns out you've added thousands of people to the Santa Rosa population, then it might be adaptive to allow gas stations to add a little bit more capacity to meet the needs of those people who can't afford EVs.
Thank you, Fred. Woody.
Oh, yeah, okay, there we go. Good afternoon. Woody Hastings with the Coalition Opposing New Gas Stations. Coalition was involved in helping the City of Santa Rosa to adopt the ordinance in 2022. To date, as well as all the other cities in Sonoma County to date, this is the first time, the first instance where the ordinance is coming back for reconsideration. I guess the first comment I'd want to make is, as the coalition, folks reach out to us. So to respond to that question around, that you posed, Mayor Stapp, around other cities following suit in that, the coalition has been reached out to by other states, Ohio, New Jersey, Oregon, Washington State, and others. Those are just the ones I can remember off the top of my head. And more nearby, in Napa County, all five incorporated municipalities in Napa County, American Canyon, Calistoga, St. Helena, Yountville, and the city of Napa have adopted permanent prohibitions. In Marin County, Fairfax, and San Anselmo. Sacramento has it in their 2040 climate action planning to get that on the books. Los Angeles has looked at it, so it is propagating. But yes, North Bay should be proud that we're leading the way in this, right? The other thing I would like, so the slide that was up there earlier about the other cities, you could just put nearly all 482 other cities in the state on that chart, but you should have the ones on there that have adopted the ordinance. Can we have the overhead thing turned on? Because the other point I want to make is there's a little graphic here. Great. Can everybody? So this is also this helps respond to that question around trends that was raised. And so hopefully this helps in sort of the macro look at what the trends are. This also comes from the California Energy Commission. Gasoline sales in the state of California peaked in 2005 at about 16 billion gallons per day. We're now at about 13.7 billion gallons per day. This chart is in thousands of barrels per day, and the trend lines that the CEC is looking at are all heading downward. Sonoma County is probably on that quickest, the lower trend line there, because we're pretty high adoption of electric vehicles. And so in my view, the city, if it's going to do anything, it should be looking at engaging with the owners and operators of gas stations as they begin to need to close, and to make sure that the responsible parties are the ones that pay for the remediation and cleanup of gas stations as they close. I think those are the comments I wanted to make, so thanks very much.
Thank you, Woody, and thanks for all of Congas's work on this over many years. We'll go to the podium over here. Miss?
Hello, my name is Christine Hookes, and I am with Congas and also with Sonoma County Climate Activist Network, who supports the original ban on new gas stations. And I am here to support that as well, not to change or alter it, but leave it as it stands. And I'd like to present an imagination for why that is, we should hold the line with that, is as Santa Rosa grows, and I have seen it grow a lot in the last 10 years, infill of housing and apartments, and that is all, and ideally close to transit-oriented growth. That's all good. We need to infill. But if all those people who grow and come in all drive cars, and if they drive gasoline cars, but any car adds to traffic, and traffic is already, can be quite debilitating in getting around. So if we hold the line on gas stations, no new infrastructure for that, and we encourage people to other modes of transportation, when people need cars, they're going to rent a car. People are going to rent I have heard of new rental developments for EVs. I think there's one in Sacramento or somewhere in the valley, that the development toward rental and people who don't want to own cars in big cities, that the availability of electric charging, and it's more efficient to get, and the lower cost for driving it is moving towards electric cars. So therefore, we want to help push that edge of changing the infrastructure to electric vehicles, and and ideally to fewer vehicles, by holding the line on new gas stations and not doing anything to upgrade those except for safety, obviously, and environmental quality. So I hope that's clear. It just came to me as I was sitting there. It's like, no, we need also fewer cars on the road. So if there's going to be driving cars, let's drive electric cars, and let's help push that envelope. I am proud to hear that we are standing out as a county and a city, and I think the time will come when, very soon, that will be a recognizable thing that is pushing the edge for cities and counties across the state, particularly, and states. California leads in a lot of this. So thank you. I'll try not to ramble. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll come back over to this podium here. Let's keep it moving. There we go. Sir, you have the floor.
Hi there. Good evening, Mayor, staff, the whole esteemed council. My name is Matt Calloway. I'm with the Sonoma County Conservation Action and a resident of Santa Rosa. I'm a supporter of public health, environmental protection, and responsible climate action. I'm here tonight to strongly urge you to retain the existing gas station ordinance without changes. That's option 4A of the staff report. This ordinance was carefully crafted in 2022 and addresses a serious environmental and public health concern tied to gas station proliferation. It strikes a really thoughtful balance. It protects our community from future toxic sites while still allowing existing stations to make important safety upgrades. We talked about how we would need to comply with new regulations to upgrade for air quality, stormwater, groundwater quality, and they could even add EV chargers. What's really at stake here? Well, the science is clear. Gas stations are public health hazards. As we expand gas stations, not just add new ones, but expand current ones, they are going to increase the release of harmful pollutants like benzene and formaldehyde, node carcinogens like respiratory illness and leukemia. Pollutants are especially dangerous for families and children. the groundwater contamination, fire hazards, and long-term toxic cleanups of petroleum brownfields really also have to be taken into account. These are going to be paid for by taxpayers when these operators disappear. We've shown that we have more than enough gas stations here in Santa Rosa to meet current and future demands. And weakening this ordinance under vague pressure from unnamed business interests really sets a dangerous precedent. Frankly, it undermines your own past leadership. This ordinance puts our city on the right side of history, aligning with what other cities in Sonoma County and around the state have already been doing and are continuing to do. This is part of a countrywide movement away from fossil fuel dependence, and although we might be ahead of the curve, that just shows something to be proud of, and having only a few years under our belt to see that it hasn't been roundly accepted by the rest of the nation is no reason to walk it back. This isn't about banning commerce or limiting freedom. It's about stopping the expansion of what is a dying industry. I mean, we saw that 25% nearly of new cars are EVs. That's a damning indictment of the fossil fuel industry and shows that we are riding a wave, even if that wave is not crested yet. So I really ask you, please don't walk back this progress. Don't open the door for more pollution and more risk to public health. Stand by your 2022 decision. Vote to uphold the current ordinance and protect the well-being of residents for now and for generations, and protect the legacy that gets fought so hard to cement as being committed to climate action and on the right side of history. Thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, SCCA. All right, next podium.
Scott Singer. First of all, I want to say thank you to the mayor, vice mayor, and the city council for letting me speak. I'm going to move quickly because I've got less than 3 minutes. I'm in contract to purchase 1425 to 1455 Santa Rosa Avenue. You might know it as the Boot Barn Shopping Center. It's adjacent to the new Starbucks that was just completed. We have a written agreement in place to relocate, keyword relocate, the Costco gas station from its existing site over to what I'll call the new site, which is the Boot Barn Center. Now, the important part of this, this involves decommissioning entirely the prior site. It would have all the tanks removed in compliance with all laws, full remediation, backfilled, paved over, striped, and turned back into parking. This is important because I'm sure you've all been to the Costco. It's overwhelmed from a parking perspective. The gas station's overwhelmed. It's frankly just been far more successful than anyone ever anticipated. If you do a chat GPT of the Santa Rosa Costco gas station, what you're going to find is an article about how there's actually traffic crashes because the lines are going out into Santa Rosa Avenue. It's an overwhelmed site, so we're trying to relocate it over to the new site. I don't represent Costco, I represent only myself, but we're in an agreement to relocate them, just so you understand who the players are. The proposal, again, would involve a full decommissioning of the old site. The new station would be state-of-the-art technology. The piping changes, the monitoring systems change. As the police chief or fire chief mentioned, there's dual wall construction now. There's actually very sophisticated and expensive new systems underground looking for leaks 24 hours a day, every second, that don't exist at the prior site. In fact, the piping at the old site is no longer used by most gas station folks because it didn't prove reliable. So I want to quickly just talk about the benefits to Santa Rosa. The environmental benefits are the old site gets decommissioned in compliance with laws, and you end up with an old station that's been turned into a safe place with a new station that's obviously monitored, safer, dual wall construction. There's going to be less greenhouse gases because idle times will go down. The new site's 2.36 acres. It has a great site plan for stacking, and it's going to be more efficient and move cars through it without idling like they do with the current. That will involve less greenhouse gases. We're going to add EV charging at the old site. I'm down to 30 seconds, I better go fast. I believe it holds about 15 EV chargers or more. There may be EV charging at the new site. We're open to discussing mitigation measures, mitigation dollars, funds to clean existing brownfields, very open to whatever the city wants to discuss. The economic benefits are good jobs that pay over $22 an hour, sales tax revenue, real estate tax revenue. I'm out of time. The request is to amend the zoning code to allow a relocation only.
Thank you, Scott. Ananda.
Good afternoon, Mayor Stapp, council members, city staff. I want to begin by acknowledging and supporting the city's climate leadership. The environmental and public health impacts associated with fossil fuels are, of course, real, and it's appropriate that the city continues to take its leadership in this area seriously. At the same time, I appreciate that this study session is an opportunity to focus on whether the current code provides sufficient flexibility for modifications, renovations, or relocation of existing gas stations, consistent with council goals of economic vitality and safe, healthy community. As written, the current regulations are extremely narrow. In practice, they create challenges for existing stations that need to modernize, improve overall site design, or participate in larger redevelopment or relocation efforts. And these are the very types of investments that we hear are needed for those same entities to make investments in EV charging infrastructure. A complete lack of flexibility can produce unintended consequences. It can prevent comprehensive projects such as a retailer locating to a more suitable site, expanding services, or integrating modern fuel and EV infrastructure from moving forward, even when those projects could result in better environmental outcomes than maintaining older, constrained facilities. A thoughtful amendment to the code does not have to undermine the city's climate goals and can reinforce them. Rather than an all-or-nothing approach, the council could consider targeted amendments that allow limited expansion or relocation of existing stations paired with thoughtful safeguards. This approach acknowledges a reality we are still living with. Most residents and workers continue to rely on gasoline vehicles today. A total prohibition does not eliminate demand. It shifts it elsewhere, in some cases increasing vehicle miles traveled, vehicle idling, traffic impacts, and reducing local oversight over environmental performance. Revisiting this ordinance is not about choosing between economic development and climate or public health. It's about ensuring that our land use regulations are nuanced, effective, and aligned with real-world conditions while we continue to support the transition to a cleaner transportation future. I appreciate the council's willingness to revisit this issue thoughtfully, and I encourage a thoughtful, calibrated path forward that advances both environmental responsibility and sound economic development. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananda. Are there other members of the public who'd like to speak? Mr. DeWitt.
Hello, my name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland. I wanted to point out that a lot of effort was put into making the ordinance, and the original text of this was well thought out. It's difficult when people come forward and say, well, you know, it's not flexible enough. We need to have some flexibility. Well, basically, one of the dilemmas that we face is people try to game the system. People try to find ways in which they can overcome what was originally decided by thoughtful decision makers. And this situation right here, I would hope you just stick with what you got and stop messing around. They can come back another time with something much better. And the situation of the city buying land in other places further down Santa Rosa Avenue and other stuff happening further down Santa Rosa leads to that urban sprawl that's such a problem for us here in Santa Rosa. We essentially have become sprawl Rosa, and we're stretching miles and miles past the downtown. And the downtown was what was supposed to be our main focus for many years now, and I'll bring that up later when I can use the overhead projector and show you some historical documents from the past. Just for now, I won't burn up your time. Don't burn up our atmosphere. Just go with what we got, get more EV charging stations closer into the center of the town. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dwayne. Are there other members of the public who'd like to speak? Miss?
Yes, please. Thank you. My name's Jenny Blaker. I submitted a comment by email, but just to summarize briefly, I was dismayed to hear that you're considering reviewing the gas station ordinance. The reasons for approving it in the first place haven't changed. Everything still applies about greenhouse gas emissions, the health and environmental impacts of gas stations, the brownfield sites, the economic considerations, and so on. Since then also, the General Plan 2050 was approved with clear and strong statements on the need to reduce fossil fuels, greenhouse gas emissions, and vehicle miles traveled. The ordinance was very carefully thought out. It only prohibits new gas stations and expanded fossil fuel infrastructure. There's nothing in it which stops safety upgrades, new tanks, or anything that would help to improve the environmental health and safety or safety of people due to gas stations. So it's only about new gas stations or expanded fossil fuel infrastructure. I'm also wondering why the request is being made now to review the ordinance. I've heard, and I don't know if this is true, that it's because Costco has said that they want to expand or make some changes to their gas station site. If that is so, I just wanted to point out that Costco gets over 70% of its profits from membership fees and then sells gas to members only at a lower price than other gas stations. And many people drive miles out of their way to get gas at Costco, thus increasing vehicle miles traveled. So if it's true that this is being done at the request of Costco, I really think the city needs to consider whether it should be making policies due to the request of a big corporation like Costco, or if that is not the reason, please could you explain why the City Council is being required to review the ordinance now. I urge you not to change the ordinance, but to keep it in place exactly as it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenny. Are there other members of the public who'd like to speak? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for final comments and direction to staff. Ms. Benuelos?
Thank you, Mayor. Just really quickly, I just wanted to say that I, thinking through this, I don't think there's anything wrong with reviewing an ordinance or a policy that was made in the past. I'll just say that because it is true that things change and things do evolve. And so for me, as still a fairly new council person, going back and looking at the original ordinance and looking at what was in it, I have it actually right here, and who ultimately voted for it was really important, so that I understood why it was done at the time that it was done. So for me, it was very beneficial, and I think there's other issues and other policies that we have in place that we're going to revisit anyway from time to time, because things do change and evolve. I don't think, I want to just say that the changes that are being made at the federal level and to some extent at the state level necessarily should dictate any changes in this particular policy, because we know that administrations come and go. We're going to get a new governor in 2026, no matter what, so things will be changing and evolving anyway. So that does not necessarily mean that just because the rebates have gone away and all of those things, that we need necessarily to assume that people will not buy EVs when they're able to. I know I would like to buy one. I don't have one. I'm lower income, and I don't have an EV, and it's kind of a dream. So I understand that it's really difficult for folks who want to help improve our environment, but they can't. But I also think that we want to do everything to encourage that to happen eventually for as many people as possible. I look back at the reason why this was created, and that was to address greenhouse gas emissions and to decrease fossil fuel use. And I don't think anything has changed as far as I think the city of Santa Rosa wanting to do that. So I would be in favor of not making any changes. I'm just going to say that right now. So. Thank you.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Mr. Okrepke?
I'm not in favor of making any changes today. I'll say that. I think we had a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of conceptual ideas that may be able to flesh out a fully thought out proposal at a future study session or a future item. I mean, I think you said we can come back with that information a half dozen times. So I don't want to fly in the face of, our climate emergency declaration. I don't want to fly in the face of our greenhouse reduction strategy. I just want to see if there's a possibility that we could, we could get both. Maybe we can't, but maybe we can. And I don't think we have enough information to discuss that today based on the responses that we were able to get today. I will say that I am still concerned. Yes, administrations do come and go, but as we've seen on a number of issues, decisions by administrations can take years to recover. And I'm very concerned about this being a regressive policy impacting some of our most vulnerable population and workforce, whether they're residents or those commuting from other areas. I do want to say that just because there's a gas station doesn't mean that people are going to use it because it's easy. It may be the only thing they can afford to do. You don't drive a 2002 Toyota because it's easy. You don't drive a 30-year-old car because it's easy. It's because of all you can do. So I just want to make sure that we're taking care of everybody in our community and see if there's a way that we could support everybody while also supporting our goals that this council and other councils have reinforced.
Thank you. Ms. Fleming?
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to look into this. I don't believe we should make any changes to the code at this time for the following reasons. One is that, and most of these have already been said, but I'll just say what I think it is right now, which is that I think that we need some time to see how the current code plays out. Since the code was adopted, we've added permitting for a new gas station. I don't know that we've shown a decline in trips to gas stations, so it's not clear to me that we have any increased demand. And then in addition, the arguments around economics I think are important to consider in terms of we have, these huge economic impacts from climate change, and almost all of that is driven by greenhouse gas and petroleum use. And so I think it's really important to consider the impacts and the costs of that. Someone may have a job and someone may have access to something, but the cost of that to our human society is, and more than just people, our ecosystems is just really profound. And then, I think that over time, as the market sort of settles out on electric vehicles, as we get some more, I hope, clarity and stability at the federal level, we'll have a better sense of what our community needs in terms of fueling. Hopefully it's electric fueling or other kinds of fueling that are not greenhouse gas emission causing. And the other thing too is that as we add housing units, making sure that those housing units have accessible transit and that we continue to expand both our city bus service as appropriate, but also tie that into Smart Rail and Sonoma County Transit are ways that we can densify without adding too much more demand for vehicles. So Santa Rosa is really lucky. Most folks live and work who live here work in Santa Rosa. We have really great short range transit, and so hopefully we can start to reduce our car traffic. The other thing about cars is that electric vehicles on the whole tend to be lighter, as you mentioned. And the city does, while we may not get all of the gas purchases in the city, we do get the benefit of having lighter vehicles on the road. And we know from our TPW team that it is really costly to maintain our roads. So anything we can do to discourage heavy vehicles in the city is a bonus for us on a back end savings. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to pull out my EV driver cred for a moment. One correction: EV vehicles are actually heavier. In fact, one of the most significant ways that EVs contribute to pollution, and they're awesome in almost all ways, by the way, is increased tire wear. So tire pollution coming off the tires because they are heavier as a result of those batteries. We can go down quite the rabbit hole here. Nevertheless, EVs and electrification is the way to go. I think we're all very similar up here on the dais. The county is heading in the right direction. The only discussion here is this particular ordinance written in the way that it is it the optimal ordinance for the county given some of the trade-offs? And what I would like, I'm certainly not in favor of making any changes today. What I would like to see, to the extent that it's possible to get, and I don't want to send staff down a very difficult wormhole, so by all means push back now or in the future as we potentially plan for a study session. How can we measure the environmental success of this initiative? Is there any way to get to a good measurement of are we in fact decreasing greenhouse gases by limiting gas stations in our area? You can hear even in the anecdotes of the people behind the podium today, there are in these discussions there's a lot of back and forth about, well, when you have cars idling, does that increase greenhouse gases as opposed to encouraging people to drive less? I don't know what the answer is. To the extent that there could be some data showing that we are in fact improving our environmental metrics in some way, particularly our GHG metric, that would be helpful. And then any information about the economic impacts, including the potential opportunity costs of the current ordinance. It should be said, because obviously thank you for the Representative Scott who came and spoke on behalf of an initiative involving Costco that has become socialized in the community. That is just one of the opportunities that has on which there's been discussion. When we were down in Las Vegas last year for ICSC, we got an earful from a lot of national retail brands that this was in fact an issue. They are aware of this ban and it's impacting their business decision. If those companies don't come here, that might be a decision we want to make, but it does impact our residents. And to Jeff's point about a regressive policy, that it's not necessarily impacting us, it's impacting other members of our community that might want those jobs or might want that convenience. And to the extent that we as a city have some even back of the envelope sense of what the economic impact is of this policy, I'd certainly be interested in seeing that. And I think those are my two areas of focus. I just want to know if this policy is doing what it's supposed to do. And again, one of the things it's supposed to be doing is pushing us forward to a future that is, if not all electric, at least has significantly fewer greenhouse gas emissions. That's what we want, but there are some trade-offs, and we want to make sure we're making those trade-offs in the best possible way. And I'd like to have a study session to talk about that. Any other thoughts from council? All right, Gabe and Jessica, have we given you enough clarity? Anything else from our side?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and I'll let Ms. Jones chime in on this. So what I heard is a further conversation to address some of the unanswered questions. I think those fall just to make sure that we're all on the same page with the mission moving forward. Really the success of the ordinance, how can we develop measures that it's meeting our climate goals, understanding economic impacts, understanding some of the more specifics associated with mitigation strategies. So that would be understanding impacts to queuing, understanding how funding can be utilized, and really keeping it in that parameters, exploring further outside of the state on which other jurisdictions have looked at similar ordinances, and coming back to the council through a study session format with those answers. And really we'll bring forward the same recommendations. Those will hold through this, but that'll allow more informed discussion for the council and the community. And I just want to give Ms. Jones an opportunity if I missed anything.
No, I think you captured it all, and I will just say that staff is working on a measurement tool for our greenhouse gas emissions and the new strategy that's been put into place. So we should, with that tool, be able to provide some additional information, particularly on this topic for the council.
Perfect. Thank you both. Thank you for all the work on this. Oh, please, Mr. Alvarez.
To add to that list, what I've been hearing a lot today is the difference between a blanket policy opposed to a case-by-case scenario or requirements. Costco opposed to one of our smaller convenience stores, and what needs and what benefits when it comes to public safety, when it comes to because we know stop and go traffic, we know emissions of idling vehicles is definitely an issue. So just the case by case compared to a blanket policy and what that looks like.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarez, and thank you again for all your work on this, Jessica and Gabe.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we will move on then to item number 6, our report, if any, on our closed session. Madam City Attorney?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is no reportable action in closed session today. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We will move on then to item 8.1, our Community Empowerment Plan update. Ms. Horta?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council. I'm Ana Horta, Community Engagement Manager with the Communications and Intergovernmental Relations Office, and I will be presenting the Community Empowerment Plan update for the month of January. On January 17th, join Santa Rosa Water and the Santa Rosa Foundation at the Volunteer Planning Day number 2. Come and help plant thousands of native plants and trees in this newly restored section of Colgan Creek from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. To register, please visit srcity.org/Colgan Creek. Also on January 17, the Rural Cemetery Preservation Committee is hosting their monthly volunteer workday. The volunteers meet at Franklin Gate, Franklin, and Monroe from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Projects include the cemetery beautification efforts such as weeding and landscaping projects, painting, repairing borders, restoring plots, and various maintenance work. For more information, please visit srcity.org/calendar. On January 19, community members are invited to join us at the Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service at Martin Luther King Jr. Park, 1208 Henley Street, from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. Volunteers will work together to honor MLK Jr. and help beautify the neighborhood park through tasks such as picking up litter, spreading mulch, and weeding. Lastly, on February 7, join a Start For Your Heart free class demo day at Finley Community Center, 2060 West College Avenue, from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. Celebrate American Heart Month by discovering fitness classes designed to keep your heart, body, and mind at their best. Classes are free, but pre-registration is required. To pre-register, please visit srcity.org/calendar. And that concludes the Community Empowerment Plan update for the month of January. Thank you.
A full slate as always, Anna. Thank you. Bringing it back to council for any questions. All right, no questions. We'll throw it over to public comment. Mr. DeWitt, are you commenting on this item?
Yes, thank you, sir.
All right, go ahead.
My name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland. I'm glad to hear that you consider planting trees and doing natural things as community empowerment. I do also. With that in mind, I'd like to see you folks start doing that along the Roseland Creek. A good portion of Roseland Creek has been in the city of Santa Rosa for a really long time. Laguna de Santa Rosa does plant some trees, but we need to have one of those big community empowerment, city organized, let's get out there and plant the trees for Roseland as soon as possible. It would give us an opportunity to take the land back from those who might encroach upon it. And I want to thank you for December 3rd meeting in which you got the news out, December 2nd meeting, excuse me. You got the news out to the city crews, and they were in the Roseland neighborhood on Wednesday, December 3rd, taking care of business, trying to treat that creek right, moving the transient vagrants along. And it was a good day all the way around. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Would any other members of the public like to comment? Seeing none, we will close public comment and bring it back to the dais for any final comments. All right, Anna, it's a new year hangover. We're light with our comments today, but thank you for all the work. All right, that takes us to item number 9, our city manager and city attorney's reports. And before I officially turn it over to our brand new interim city manager, Lorianne Farrell, I want to welcome her to the city of Santa Rosa. I assume those of you, those regulars here, noticed her on the dais. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming up. We're all glad to have you here. I think I can speak on behalf of the group. As part of your report, feel free to hold forth.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Stapp, and thank you, council members, for putting your trust in me. This is a very exciting opportunity for me. I'm really happy and thrilled to be here and to be bringing my 3 decades of experience in local government across different cities throughout the country, but in particular in California, to bear to help you achieve the goals that you've outlined in your strategic plan and that we've discussed individually. Just really happy to be here and want to say that the executive team has been very warm and welcoming. All the staff that I've met so far have been fantastic, and also the community members that I've gotten a chance to meet. And so I'll be making rounds to meet different community organizations, our employee associations, and obviously working closer with you to help you achieve your goals over the coming months until a permanent city manager is selected. So thanks again for putting your trust in me.
Glad to have you here. Any other official business from the city manager's office before I turn it over to our city attorney?
I will make a report at the next meeting. I just wanted to keep it simple this evening, so nothing more.
That works. And the city should know that within a day of her being here, I was dragging her off to 7 a.m. meetings. So we put her right to work. Over then to the city attorney. Teresa, anything?
I have no report this evening, but I do want to extend a warm welcome to Lorianne. We are excited to have you on board.
Thank you. All right. Any members of the public wish to comment on this item? Dwayne, welcome.
Ms. Dwayne DeWitt, I'm from Roseland. I would like to invite the new city manager to come to Roseland. Roseland School Gymnasium is a perfect spot to have a community meeting and talk to a lot of folks that come from Roseland. They'll come there very easily, and they will welcome you. We're looking for that new voice, that new breath, fresh air. It's nothing but a good time. Thank you kindly. Have a great new year.
Thank you, Dwayne. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to speak? We'll close public comment then, and we will go on to item 10, statements of abstention or recusal by council members. I believe we have one. Mr. Okrepke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be recusing myself from a portion of item 15.2 out of an abundance of caution, as it may conflict with my profession.
Any other statements of abstention or recusal? Seeing none, we will then go on to item 11, mayor and council members' reports. Any reports this evening? Ms. Fleming?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor. I'd like to start out by just extending a warm welcome to Lorianne. I'm so glad you're here, and we're looking forward to working with you during this period. Lots is going on, and I just feel like it's a new year, new city manager, and just really grateful that you're joining us. So thank you. Last week, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission had a special meeting in San Francisco, and we convened the first meeting of what's called the district. The district is a board that will govern a district of the 5 southern counties of the Bay Area, which is Contra Costa, Santa Clara, San Mateo, Alameda, and San Francisco. And the purpose of this district is to address problems associated with the transit fiscal cliff, which have occurred all across the state. So at our last meeting, our first meeting and our last meeting last Wednesday, we heard polling data around a potential revenue measure. The polling data was not sufficient for us to move forward and recommend going forward with a measure that the district would do. And so at this time, we'll await more if another entity does end up deciding to run a measure, and I'll be happy to provide educational information about this. But you might say, how does this impact us here in Sonoma County? And that's a great question. And one of the things that's important to remember is that the Bay Area ecosystem is an economic ecosystem. It impacts us, and when there are downturns in the southern counties or even upturns, things really affect us around traffic, around property costs, around all kinds of things. And specifically, we do have a really significant shortfall for BART and Caltran, and there's something called SB 125, which is over $100 million, and that is being funded in part from Sonoma County revenues that would otherwise go to our county. So this does really matter to us. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to talk about it more.
Thank you for all your work on those committees, Ms. Fleming. Ms. Benuelos?
Thank you, Mayor. I just really quickly wanted to extend a thank you to our public safety and law enforcement, Santa Rosa Police, for their work this weekend at the rally. And I really just wanted to take a moment to thank them for all the times that we've had rallies in the last year and this past weekend, and what a fantastic job they have done keeping everyone safe and keeping everything peaceful. And along with that, I wanted to thank the community as well for peacefully exercising their constitutional rights, which is free speech. So really, just really well done, and I hope that that continues, and I hope that whatever happens, that we continue to conduct ourselves in the best way that we can while I don't know, probably some folks feel a little frustrated, and I understand that. So I just wanted to thank everyone all around for all of their work. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Good points. Mr. Okrepke? Oops, sorry, I had you listed. I will add just a few then. The board of Sonoma Clean Power met last week. It was the main focus the main areas of focus were to review the legislative foci right now. They're primarily geothermal. Sonoma Clean Power, to its credit, is looking for ways to streamline the state's processes around opening up the geothermal industry, which is obviously of great local importance and regional importance because of the geysers. And Sonoma Clean Power is doing a lot of heavy advocacy around that. As well, they're going to buy they're trying to buy a super fund site onto which they're going to put a solar power generation facility up in Mendocino. So a really cool new project that's going to lower rates, especially for the people in Mendocino. And then they're also looking to expand their e-bike program, or at least continue the e-bike program. So as always, Sonoma Clean Power is quite busy. And then on behalf of Mr. Okrepke, I will note that we had our first meeting of the 3 different ad hoc committees yesterday, actually, at the fairgrounds related to the United Soccer League. So the Fair Board has an ad hoc committee, the county has an ad hoc committee, and we as a city have an ad hoc committee. And we met in glorious harmony yesterday to talk about the opportunities with United Soccer League. There was a robust discussion, and we have a few other meetings scheduled for the course of this year. And stay tuned, folks, because lots of activity with the United Soccer League that we'll talk about in the future. And that can, now you want to speak, Mr. Okrepke?
I did. I didn't have many events since our last meeting, but there was one I wanted to do. So we did have our latest Measure H Oversight Committee meeting, and the unimportant part is that I was voted chair. The important part is that the vice chair is Matt Tegnazzi, one of our firefighters, and member of 1401, and a labor representative on the committee. So congratulations to him, and come March, we will have all of our analysis of our department and the rest of the department's usage of the Measure H funds, and make sure everything is up to snuff.
Excellent. Glad for a strong Santa Rosa voice there. Thanks for mentioning it. With that, let's go to public comment. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on any of the reports? Seeing none, we will close public comment, and we will go on now to our series of appointments to our various boards and committees. Let's see if we can scoot this one along. I'm going to call item 11.2 to start. These are the board chair. This is our annual, the mayor's annual opportunity to appoint or reappoint those local volunteers who are doing great work and heading our city boards, which range from Art and Public Places, BPU, et cetera. I'm going to call for public comment first. Are there thoughts from the public on this item regarding the appointment or reappointment of any of the chairs for our community boards at the moment? Mr. DeWitt, I had a feeling.
My name is Dwayne DeWitt. I am from Roseland, and 30 years ago, the city of Santa Rosa had put forward an effort to try to have more diversity on boards and commissions. One of the things that could be more helpful, I think, is if we also opened up the chairman and chairwoman positions so that they alternated rather than just keeping the same person in a chair position for long periods of time. This would give the younger people an opportunity to learn how to do these type of activities and how to move on up within our local governmental system. So I'm supportive of our local governmental system. I am a person who totally believes in duty, honor, and country. In my case, community also. So let's open it up. Let's get some more young people in these things. Let's let them be the chairs and chairwomen of these different groups, and we'll have a better city in the future. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Dwayne. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to speak? Seeing none, we will close public comment, and I will announce that I would like to reappoint all of the existing chairs, so no changes. And Madam City Clerk, if I understand correctly, that means we do not need to take a vote, correct?
Correct, Mayor.
All right. We are then moving on to item 11.3.1. This is the mayor's opportunity to appoint or reappoint members to all of the council subcommittees. We will be staying mostly the same. I'm grabbing my notes here. Two changes. I'm pleased to appoint Ms. Banuelos to the Violence Prevention Partnership and also make her chair. She and Ms. Rogers will do a great job on that committee. So, and then also on the Public Safety Subcommittee, I am going to, it turns out I'm going to appoint myself to that committee along with Ms. Fleming and Mr. Okrepke, who will remain as chair. And those are the only two items on the subcommittees that or the only two changes I'll make. And oops, I should have called for public comment first. Are there members of the public who would like to comment on those subcommittee appointments? I agree. Thank you very much for serving. We will move on then to item, oh, actually, I think I do I need a council support for that? Madam City Clerk, I just want to confirm. The various processes sometimes get me confused.
No, Mayor, it looks like this is solely a responsibility that lives with the mayor.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. We will move on to item 11.4.1. These are the mayor's appointments to the county, regional, and state positions. And I am, just double check. There are two changes. Everything will remain the same on those appointments with two exceptions. So Ms. Fleming and I both love Sonoma Clean Power. Unfortunately, Ms. Fleming's schedule, it makes it sometimes difficult for her to get to that meeting, at least on some occasions. So she and I have been flip-flopping. We're going to continue to tag team, but for the coming year, I'll take the primary role and she'll take the alternate role. But believe me, we will both be attending those meetings. So the only change there is flipping the primary and the alternate. And then on the Zero Waste Sonoma Board, there is a decision for the council to reach here. As we discussed last month during our censure discussion, it was my intention and my preference to remove Ms. McDonald from the committees on which she was serving. It is my preference that, for the reasons that we discussed last month, that we make that change this month, but this is ultimately a council decision, and so I want to throw this out to the council that if, again, there are issues of workload here when we're making these changes, and many of you have expressed the difficulty of making these committee meetings. On the Zero Waste Sonoma Board, we have a staff member here at the city who attends frequently, and I'm willing to be essentially I'll be the main appointee, but essentially the alternate in combination with the staff. If the council agrees that we should make the change and remove Ms. McDonald from this board, but in order to do that, obviously we need a motion and a second and a vote, and so I'm going to put that out to council now for you to decide whether, as we discussed last month, we want to make that change.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Mayor, can you please clarify the motion on the floor for which two positions?
It is for the Zero Waste. It is for the Zero Waste Sonoma. I guess we would do two separate. Do we have to do two separate votes? Apologies, I was racing ahead. Let's go back to Sonoma Clean Power. What's at issue here is simply to reverse, to have me as the primary and Ms. Fleming as the alternate. Is there a motion?
I'll move that, thank you.
All right, Ms. Fleming moves that. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Okrepke is the second. We'll do a quick vote.
Mayor, we need to take public comment.
Oh, of course. These committee appointments, they get me flustered every year. All right. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on the Sonoma Clean Power appointment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it to a vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Rogers is absent. Councilmember McDonald is absent. Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Banuelos?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Okrepke?
Aye.
Mayor Stapp?
Yes.
Let the record show this passes with 5 affirmative votes.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's go back to the discussion that we were in the middle of then. So we have zero waste. And in fact, this is item 11.5.3. I'm willing to serve as effectively the alternate, although in reality, I would be the primary. The council has to decide if it does wish to remove Ms. McDonald from this position. I'll look for a motion in a second.
Just a point of clarification. So the motion would be to remove Councilmember McDonald and then all in one motion that you would replace her?
Then I'm willing to fill in that spot for the time being.
Okay. All right. So I will move that we remove Councilmember McDonald and that the mayor will fill that spot.
All right, so we have a motion. Is there a second? Seeing
I'll second.
Mr. Okrepke seconds. All right, so we have a motion, a second. Let's go to public comment. Mr. DeWitt.
Dwayne DeWitt from Roseland. Duty, honor. I take those things very seriously, and I think that one of the things that's occurring here is an overstepping, if you will, because in the past there have been other members of our council who've been involved with other members of the city staff in what might be called personal relationships. That's their business. And I think that this council should be minding its own business in some ways, because essentially what we got here is a bit of a witch hunt, and you folks are punishing somebody. It's beyond the pale in a way. And I really feel that if you believe in duty, you would give that person a bit of a hearing, not just here, but actually the kind of administrative hearings that they have where they look and see if somebody violated one of the rules of their organization. The military does that, and I believe most branches of government do that. And I really haven't heard much of what the great problem was that one member of the council was involved with someone in the staff of the city. It's happened before, many times actually. I've watched it, and I know some of the people that have been involved. So I really think that you folks have overstepped here, and I hope that you would look at this like you don't want to set a precedent that might come back and bite you in the butt. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Dwayne. Would any other members of the public like to speak? Seeing none, we will bring it back for a vote. Madam City Clerk, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Rogers is absent. Councilmember McDonald is absent. Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Banuelos?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Okrepke?
Yes.
Mayor Stapp?
Yes.
Let the record show this passes with 5 affirmative votes.
Thank you. Let's actually go back up the page. I skipped that over. This is the mayor's appointments to county, regional, and state positions. No changes there. I'll open that up to public comment. If there are any members of the public who'd like to comment on 11.4.1. Seeing none, we will close public comment. And I don't think we need a vote there. Do we need a vote, Madam City Clerk, on that one?
On no changes to item 11.4.1, if there was no action made,
We're good to go,
no
right?
public comment needed.
Okay, let's clean up some of these I glossed over quickly. 11.5, we've effectively discussed them, but let's do this in the proper fashion. 11.5.1, this is the appointment of representative and alternate to Sonoma Clean Power Transportation and Climate Authorities. No change there. Any public comment? Seeing no members of the public, we will simply keep our current staffing. Let's see, let me move on to 11.5.4. This is the appointment of representatives and alternate to a renewable enterprise district. Again, I'm not recommending any changes. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on that item? Seeing none, we will close public comment, and we are status quo there. Thank you, Ms. Fleming. Madam City Clerk, just so I don't make any other errors, did I get through? Did I hit them all? Madam City Attorney, did I make it through? This is the most anxiety-producing item of the year for me. For whatever reason, it is so confusing. Okay, we are quickly moving on before we discover something that I missed. We're going to go on to a much easier item, item 12, approval of minutes. Are there any amendments or edits to these minutes? Seeing none, we'll open up to public comment. Would any members of the public like to comment on the minutes from December 16th? Seeing none, we will close public comment and we'll adopt the minutes as submitted. And now we will move on to consent. Are there any members of the public? We don't have any that we have to read this week. Is that correct, Vice Mayor? With the consent items?
We no longer read the consent calendar.
I'm still getting used to our new streamlined method. We made a switch a few weeks before Lorianne arrived. All right, so then I think all I have to ask is, are there any questions or comments on the consent items? Seeing none, I can call for public comment. Any members of the public wish to comment on consent? Dwayne, I waited just for you. We're on consent, Dwayne. Any comment?
Kindly, sir, I could sense it. Nothing but a good time with you folks, and I really appreciate that fact. On the consent today, what's of interest to me is that we contract with people from outside of the city when we could actually be getting some of those services here in the city. Okay, you've got these 2 contracts with people from Sacramento.
Could you lean into the mic a bit, Dwayne? It's quiet down here.
Excuse me. I know you want to hear me. I apologize.
We waited for you.
My name is Dwayne DeWitt. I am from Roseland. And on consent, you have 2 items, 13.3 and 13.4, which are dealing with organizations from Sacramento, West Sacramento. These types of activities could be done closer to home, and that would help our business community. We got a whole auto row right over there off of Corby. We got people that can provide this type of activity. I don't know how the competition goes for the purchasing orders, but I do hope that in the future you look towards local Santa Rosa business folks and give them a better chance. I'll be speaking at public comment. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Dwayne. All right, Vice Mayor, do we have a motion?
I will move to adopt consent items 13.1 through 13.8.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second by Mr. Alvarez. Madam City Clerk, you can call the vote whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Rogers and McDonald are absent. Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Banuelos?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Okrepke?
Yep.
Mayor Stapp?
Yes.
Let the record show this passes with 5 affirmative votes.
All right, thank you. And seeing as we have about 6 minutes before it's 5 o'clock, we're going to go ahead to item 15.1, our federal legislative platform. Do we have Kyriakis and John online? And Ms. Wood, welcome. Yes.
Mayor, it'll be one moment. I'm just getting Kyriakis and John promoted to panelist on Zoom.
No worries. Misty, thanks for leading this. Welcome.
Thank you.
Kyriakis and John, welcome. We know it's late out east.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor. Good evening, the Mayor and Council. I want to wish Kyriakis and I want to wish you folks a happy new year. Best wishes to the city staff and the city of Santa Rosa, and welcome to Ms. Farrell in her new position. I'd like to start just briefly by talking about several things related to the landscape here in Washington currently. As you know from comments that were made during the work session in Sacramento and in Washington, we've faced some headwinds this year with local government advocacy. As you may know, as of January 20th, 26 executive orders were issued, followed by another 202 executive orders since then throughout this year or the past year. And we're faced
John,
also with some.
I'm sorry to interrupt, John. Do you mind if I start the PowerPoint here so we can go through some of the points?
Oh, sure.
Thank you. I appreciate your excitement.
Well,
I might have led you astray, John. My apologies to both of you.
No. I don't think some of this is on that PowerPoint. This is sort of an introduction, but
All right.
go ahead.
Miss Wood, we turn to you. Thank you.
Thank you for your flexibility. Good evening, Misty Wood, Communications and Intergovernmental Relations Officer. I'm here tonight with John O'Donnell and Kyriakos Pagonis with MMO. They are our federal lobbyists, and we're here tonight to discuss the 2026 federal platform. Each year, the council adopts a federal platform that outlines a city's federal policy and project priorities. This platform provides guidance and direction to city staff and federal representatives about those priorities. And so with that, I will pass the mic to MMO partners. They can discuss a little bit of the highlights of 2025 and then look to the proposed changes for the 2026 platform. MMO,
Okay.
take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Misty. I'm sorry I jumped in front of you. So what I was saying is, so a lot of Biden administration policy and programs have been changed, portions of them eliminated. And as you also know, over the past, part of the headwinds over the past 12 months have been these executive orders, which have caused federal courts across the country to issue injunctions, restraining orders, vacating parts of the executive orders. One in particular that Kyriakis and myself have dealt with in some places is the Sanctuary Cities executive order, which, as you well know, is involving several court cases, the city and county of San Francisco versus the president, the city of Santa Clara versus the president, and then back east, Chelsea and Lawrence, Massachusetts, challenging the Sanctuary Cities executive order. We maintain close contact with the Conference of Mayors, the League of Cities, and the National Association of Counties to follow what's happening on the front with these executive orders and report to those frequently when talking with city staff. Mr. Pagonis is going to give you more details about the city's federal platform for 2026 and successes in the 2025 platform. At this point, I just want to mention several things that are on the horizon, both with authorizing and appropriations legislation. This year, there are 4 bills that affect local governments that will be dealing with FEMA reform legislation, the water resources development legislation, 2 housing bills, and surface transportation legislation. I'm glad to be able to report to you that on the FEMA housing and transportation bills, and I would add water resources, there's a significant amount of bipartisan partnership that takes place with the minority and the majority in Congress. And we've seen some of that start with some of this legislation, which was introduced last year. We expect to see more of it this year. What typically holds up the surface transportation bill, which is a reauthorization of that Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that had so much infrastructure spending. What will hold this one up this reauthorization is finding the revenue to pay for a new reauthorized surface transportation bill. But even when we get to that point, and that's usually one of the last things that is dealt with by Congress in that reauthorization, we'll find the Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Finance Committee having to engage in quite a bit of bipartisanship to find the right revenue solution for that legislation. Where we are in appropriations, we're finishing the FY26. I think we're reasonably optimistic that that 11 of the appropriations bills will be finished before January 30th. The one that seems to be a problem is Homeland Security, and that has a lot to do with what has been happening with immigration policy. So it may wind up at the end of this month that all the other federal agencies and departments are funded for FY26, but Homeland Security will have to adhere to the FY25 spending limits. It won't allow for any new spending in the department. There can be some anomalies that cover things that are unusual for the department, but it looks like we're going to a CR for Homeland Security, and the other bills will be final before the CR expires on January 30th. Kyriakis, do you want to take over?
Thanks, John. I really appreciate it. Good evening, Mayor, staff, Vice Mayor Okrepke, and members of the council, and Ms. Farrell. Nice to meet you online. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the 2026 federal platform and outcomes from 2025. As John highlighted, 2025, to say it mildly, was certainly a tough year for federal funding for local government programs, which faced significant headwinds, including, as John alluded to, some funding cancellations and terminations, project reviews, and administration proposed budget cuts. And despite these headwinds, the City of Santa Rosa's federal advocacy program, I'm happy to announce and discuss, continue to secure funding for priority projects and advance advocacy results on federal policies important to the city. I'll say this success, and I've said it before, and John and I have talked about this many times with you all, is that this is a team sport. These successes are a direct result of the City Council's involvement and direction in this platform and advocating for these projects and priorities, the city staff's time and effort and involvement, as well as, and to say it mildly, the congressional delegation's steadfast support for your priorities and projects. And that includes Senators Padilla, Schiff, Representatives Thompson and Huffman. I'll do my best to kind of give you the high notes of the federal funding awarded and funding that's currently pending. So right now, as we look at it, as John mentioned, the FY26 process is still ongoing, but to date, about $38.6 million has been awarded to the city through formula funding and through competitive grants. That funding number, and you'll see it on the next page, and before we get there, I just want to say that's probably going to go up to about 41 million or close to 42. Once this week is over, we anticipate another 2.3 million for the city's Llano trunk earmark request will be finalized. So put that in the awarded column probably by the end of the week. Next slide. Pending funding is about 30.5 million. We've got a number of projects that are still in the pipeline and being developed. First one you'll see is an economic development request for the Roseland area. A number of projects under water and energy resiliency. As I said earlier, the Llano trunk line looks like it's closer to being final, and we should know by the end of the week. A couple other competitive grant programs, projects are still out there, like Farmers Lane, and a couple of projects. I will say on the last one on this page, DOT buses and infrastructure, 9.9 million. That project was actually awarded a few years ago, but as we mentioned earlier, when the administration came in, they took a pause on awarding projects that had not been obligated. And so this project currently is under review. The city is working, and we're working with staff to get that project obligated hopefully in the next month or so. Next slide. Before we talk about strategy, I also wanted to say what's not on this sheet right now is really some of the projects that were awarded previously. I know this council and previous councils fought hard to get funding post-disaster for a number of critical community projects, and those projects came online in 2025. I just wanted to highlight that about 17 million was made available in federal funding for Fire Station 5, which I know you all broke ground and opened the facility recently. 15 million for 2 housing projects with over 190 new units have come online, and again, made possible with federal funding through the CDBG DR program. In addition, I know the city and staff have been working really hard with community partners and the state to get the Hearn Avenue Interchange project open, and so congratulations on that. Major achievements, and just wanted to congratulate you on getting those over the finish line. So I wanted to now shift over to 2026 and the strategy. That's the strategy outlined, aligned with the city's goals and goal setting cycle that took place earlier last year. It also acknowledges rapidly changing federal government policies and actions almost by the second, and incorporates feedback from council department heads and the city manager. Back in October, John and I had 2 days of meetings with council and the city management and staff to get feedback on the direction for this 2026 federal platform. Next slide, please. So the platform that you have in front of you hasn't really changed significantly from 2025. What the next slides do is sort of highlight the changes that were made. So without going through line by line, there's a lot of content here. I'll just point out on this first slide, wildfire extreme weather, FEMA Act and Fix Our Forests Acts were added to the list of legislation that we're certainly monitoring and the city has weighed in on. The city's also added update to National Insurance Program and flooding and funding for flood prevention. Next slide. On surface transportation, there was a line included basically to make sure that we were aware and tracking the surface transportation authorization bill. Also included road safety as part of the language, and also extreme weather. Surface transportation authorization bill, as John mentioned, will be coming up in the next few months, and the city has weighed in with its recommendations. Next slide. Under surface transportation, the language here is a continuation and slightly modified from the previous year on monitoring any action that Department of Labor may take. Next slide. Water infrastructure, conservation, and energy resiliency. A couple things were added specifically in that first paragraph. We've added the Corps of Engineers environmental infrastructure as a program to support and to monitor. That's the account that the city's Lano trunk line project is funded under, so we've added that to include to reference that. Next page. Water infrastructure, again, conservation, energy resilience. First paragraph is new, and that is in response to what Congress did a couple years ago to include direct payments to local governments through the tax code, and wanted to make sure we included a statement that supports any ongoing efforts to bring that back. It was rescinded under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, so this reaffirms the city's support for that type of programs. Next slide, please. So under the housing and homelessness, the city added, I should say, safe parking programs to the list of programs to support and monitor. And next slide, please. And to help attract new businesses was also added in recognition of the city's ongoing efforts to attract and help small businesses expand in Santa Rosa. Next slide, please. Also added to transfer or sell federal property to local governments, given some interest that the city has in federal properties located next door or across the street, I should say, and also to provide additional incentives to spur affordable housing. Next slide. Under public safety, under that first paragraph, after to fund public safety and infrastructure, technology was added. I know the city has been using new technologies to help augment and support police officers, so that was included, and also drone deployment was included. In that second paragraph, referencing the COPS hiring program and the nexus to school resource officers. Next slide. And then new language was added to reflect ongoing concerns by the fire department on the increased costs for fire equipment and apparatus since COVID, and that's why that was included there. And I'll turn it back to Misty on the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyriakis. Thank you, Mayor Stapp, Vice Mayor Krupke, and members of the council for the opportunity to present this evening. At this time, the Communications and Intergovernmental Relations Office recommend that the council adopt the 2026 federal legislative platform by resolution, and we are all here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wood, and thank you, John Kyriakis. I'm going to bring it back to council for questions. Any questions on our legislative platform? Ms. Benuelos, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I was wondering, last year when we did this, we added something in regard to immigration, which I know you talked about at the beginning. That was kind of in regards to economic development. And I'm just wondering now, with the state of the way things are, again, which you addressed at the beginning, if there's some way we can incorporate something along the lines of immigration and deportation policies. That's, for me, that's one of my big concerns at the federal level, is the way that deportations are being handled. I know that that's not happening here at that level, but I am really concerned, really concerned that they're really raising fears, and I don't know what is in store for California or the Bay Area, but I just feel like we need to be prepared. So, and I don't know what the language would be, or if it can be addressed here, but I feel like, you know, you talked about it at the beginning, so it's really kind of on your minds, I think, and it is as well for me, and I think many people in Sonoma County, so.
Kyriakis, would you like to jump in with any thoughts?
Sure. Councilmember Benuelos, thank you for the comments. And I know that this came up when we talked about this last year. I believe the council has adopted a couple of resolutions, I think during the previous Trump administration. I don't know if those are, you know, maybe we need to look at those in terms of, you know, language that's included in those, or whether those suffice at this point. But happy to work with staff and the city attorney's office and the city manager on developing something that reflects your concerns.
And just to clarify, Kyriakis, you're probably referring to the indivisible city ordinance?
Correct.
Which is very much still in effect. To Ms. Benuelos' point, I might also add that I think we're all working, I suspect that all of us are having direct conversations with our federal electeds about this issue, so that kind of advocacy is already underway. Is there a more specific thrust that you had in mind?
You know, I know we're all having conversations with them, and I know there's only so much that we can do, but I'm just really concerned. You know, what we're seeing at the national level and even in Southern California, and I know there have been, you know, shall I say, threats to Northern California from time to time about what could happen here. And I don't know what the language would be or if it's even appropriate in this package, but I just feel like if this is our message to the federal government, I feel like we need to say something. I don't know about the rest of you, but this is making me ill every day of what is happening to folks, innocent people, citizens, people who have every right to be here, and people who are exercising their constitutional rights. And I just feel like if we keep saying we're the leaders of the Bay Area and all of that, great. I think we need to take a leadership role in this as well, because I can't stand for this personally. And people are demanding that we do something, and I know it's limited what we can do, but I feel like we need to speak out in some way. And if there's a way that we can do that within this platform, I think we should be doing it.
Point well taken. Is this a conversation that we continue sort of offline? Is that a good way to proceed?
Sure. I mean, yeah, that's why I said I don't know if it's appropriate here, but if this is where we send a message to the federal government or to our federal representatives in some kind of an official way, if we can include it in here, I think we should. But yes, we can continue to have the conversation, absolutely.
Perhaps Ms. Fleming has an idea?
Thank you. Councilmember Banuelos, I share your concerns, and I think that it takes a lot of courage to speak up, especially when we have limited power, and it can draw unwanted attention. But at the same time, I think we have a moral obligation to use the power that we do have, which is not significant. But I would just ask our MMO, our folks, John and Kyriakis, if you have worked with other jurisdictions who've raised these concerns, and if so, what sorts of items you've been putting in the platforms to support them.
Councilmember Fleming, I think a lot of, I won't say a lot, a few of our other cities that we work with have taken sort of the same action that you've taken in terms of your resolution, as the mayor mentioned previously. And I think, obviously they've worded it differently or what have you, or welcoming city, that type of thing. So I think the actions that you've taken are what some other cities are doing as well.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Banuelos, I don't know about you, but I find that, not really helpful in terms of moving forward your concerns for this moment in time. Those actions were taken at a time when things were bad, but probably unimaginable what's going on now. I, for one, would be in support of something else, either through our goal-setting process, in terms of, fast tracking some additional strong language to rebuke the federal actions.
Yeah, I would really appreciate that. I think that we do need, as we go back and look at what was done before and what we could do now, not ever imagining what's happening now could happen, that we do need to do that. Yeah.
Mr. Alvarez.
Carolyn, I also appreciate you having the courage to speak up regarding this issue. One of the things that I think about often is it's easy for me to want something, but I want it because I don't have the same fear of those that are in that fear of there's a sacrifice in the quality of life. I know that San Jose, for example, is bringing policy forward where they require any ICE presence to be without masks to identify themselves. And something that Councilmember Fleming just said, drawing attention. That word also draws into that conversation of will we be drawing attention to Santa Rosa. And I mean, this is just conversation I have in my head. And I'm thinking, it's easy for me to say, and I'm thinking also within my head, it's easy for me to say, I demand this, I demand that, but at what cost? And who would actually be paying the price of that cost? But I would love to continue this conversation. I absolutely support any dialogue that we have in respect to that issue.
Is there consensus around the idea that we continue this during goal setting, since I think we're all in favor of continuing or pushing forward exactly what you're suggesting? Is goal setting the appropriate place? All right, thank you. And it's worth underlining for the public also that that in several of the lawsuits that John mentioned, the city is a party to those lawsuits. So we are putting resources legally to pushing back at the Trump administration. Bringing it back to council, any additional questions right now before we open this up to public comment? Seeing none, we'll open this up to the public. Would any members of the public like to speak? All right, Fred, you're first to the podium. Go ahead.
I'm not sure exactly what the folks in Washington are doing, but I had a thought that in game theory, when you play by the rules and the people who you're playing with don't, then you get the sucker's payoff. And so I would hope that as people who are representing Santa Rosa, that you'd play as hardball as you could, so that that the partners that we're dealing with in Washington who might be cheating or not playing by the rules, then we don't get the sucker's payoff here. I certainly agree with Councilmember Banuelos' sentiments, and also Councilmember Alvarez. It's really nuanced as to what to do. You want to stand up. You don't want to, in bully management, if you don't confront a bully, then you just keep getting more of the same. So, but then Councilmember Alvarez's point is that, who's going to pay the cost of that? So that's, it's a really difficult situation. But personally, myself, I don't like to get the sucker's payoff. I don't want to get bullied, and I hope that the city stands up and, represents what we think is fair and right.
Thank you, Fred. Mr. DeWitt.
Hello, my name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland. Once again, duty and honor. American law enforcement people have a duty not to kill unarmed women. That's real basic. You're supposed to announce who you are and what you're doing before you fire deadly force on someone. What I wanted to speak about, though, involved the housing voucher programs. The Veterans Administration sent out a recent email to veterans with a link to a videotape of one of the staff from the VA stating they are still strongly behind what's known as U.S. Housing, Urban Development, Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing Vouchers, and that they're successfully used in other jurisdictions, more so than here, as far as I can tell. So I would hope that our folks in Washington, D.C. would make a point of having that be a part of the platform and look deeper into it. It wasn't mentioned in the 2025 stuff, and Santa Rosa is the one that oversees the HUD-VASH vouchers for Sonoma County. So this really needs to be looked into. Secondary, brownfields. United States Environmental Protection Agency brownfields grants are still in play, and this administration is helping to fund those types of things. They look to where they can see money being made for businesses. Brownfields helps that. Roseland has those problems with brownfields. This is a spot where we could be looking to bring in funding, and it could go under your water infrastructure conservation and energy resiliency platform that you already have, because in the past, we were able to actually prove that stormwater pollution was happening along Sebastopol Road, and we were able to get the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board to find those polluters and get things moving forward. We also were able to get a small grant of $392,000 from the US EPA while Roseland Sebastopol Road section was in the county for phase 1 assessments of contaminated land along Sebastopol Road and Roberts Avenue, which is in the Santa Rosa Downtown Specific Area Plan. So now's the time for us to step up and tell the folks at the federal level they could help us on what we already have in play. I'm looking forward to you folks reaching out to the community and the new city manager getting more involved in these types of activities, bringing these funds home and showing the federal level people that we're basically on the same page on a lot of things, just not good with bullying and deadly force being used when it's inappropriate. This is really important, and you'd be doing right to speak up about that. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Dwayne. Would any other members of the public like to speak on this item? Seeing none, we will close public comment. And let's see, I'll ask for a motion. Actually, I'll ask if there's any further discussion and then ask for a motion. I'll ask for a motion then. Ms. Banuelos.
Let's see. I move looks like it's the Communications and Intergovernment Relations Office recommends that the council by resolution adopt the 2026 federal legislative platform and adopt the resolution as presented by staff.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second by Mr. Alvarez. Any final discussion? And I mentioned that just because I was going to do a quick thanks with our MMO partners. John and Kyriakis, the slides early in the presentation with the dollar figures really said it all. You have changed our city for the better in a lot of different ways. And Kyriakis, thank you for underlining the Llano trunk line funding that we fingers crossed we can expect by the end of the week. That was a lot of work by council members across multiple councils and people in your office. Thank you so much. You are great to work with, and thank you for bringing some good news into the city, even during difficult times in DC. We very much appreciate it. And with that, Madam City Clerk, whenever you're ready, let's call the vote.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Rogers and McDonald are absent. Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Banuelos.
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Okrepke.
Yes.
Mayor Stapp.
Yes.
Let the record show this passes with 5 affirmative votes.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to bounce around a little bit. Since it's after 5 o'clock now, we're going to go back to our first public comment on non-agenda matters, and then we're going to go to our public hearing. So I'm going to call item 14 right now. This is the chance to comment on items not listed on the agenda. If you're a member of the public and you wish to comment on an item not listed on the agenda, please make your way to the podium now. It has been too long, Dwayne. All right, yes, let's fire up the overhead projector.
Hello, my name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland, but for over 30 years I'm participating in Santa Rosa downtown activities. This is the downtown update from the heart of Santa Rosa in the spring of 1995. It was put together, I was part of that group, while the downtown task force for the city was meeting across the street in the Chamber of Commerce buildings to talk about how we were going to improve the city. The reason I bring this here today is because with time, we have actually included part of Roseland into the downtown specific plan. This is that study area. This is what you've adopted. This is Roseland. This is where Roberts Avenue is. So when I say the words duty and honor, those are the things I want us to do. We took on the duty of helping Roseland. Now's the time to do that. I actually have here with me the progress report on the Roseland redevelopment area from 1992. I've been following that since 1984 when that was put together. And I bring it up because basically we've talked about how we want to get more housing into our community. We had this here in Santa Rosa 25 years ago, and we talked about, we're going to get some good stuff in here. We're going to do urban villages, specific plans. We're going to involve the community in the visioning. We're going to do good revitalization. All kinds of stuff's going to happen. So with that in mind, 10 years ago, I started up a little column we called the Roseland Review. This was when we here in Roseland were still in a county island because the city had made that over 30 years ago with the Bellevue Ranch annexation. So you finally took us in 8 full years ago, and we're looking to do some positive things. It's difficult for a member of the public to be actively involved in such a system because it gets more expensive than you can imagine. This is the City of Santa Rosa's current general plan. It costs a citizen $282 to get that bad boy. Notice I haven't opened mine because it has typographical errors, and I have to take it back and get him to do it right. I want to leave you with this. This was put together by a firm called MIG, Moore, Isofano, and Goltzman. I know those people personally, and back in 1984, Daniel Isofano did his PhD on public involvement in environmental planning. Basically, that was followed up on in 2007, 2008, with one on public involvement for environmental planning and redevelopment that handled Roseland, and that's in the University of California, Berkeley Library. There's lots of ways we could make it all better, but it takes political will. We could talk ourselves blue in the face down here and never get anything done unless we can convince you at the podium to step up and actually help make some of this happen. The best way was just said with these federal lobbyists. Roseland, Roberts Avenue, go for the money. Welcome, Miss New City Manager.
Thank you, Dwayne. Are there any other members of the, oh, Fred, there you are. Fred, the floor is yours.
I had a chance to read the city's December quarterly economic report, and I send in a 8-page comment, which I'm sure that you guys are all dying to read. I've noticed that at the beginning of the quarterly economic report, it mentioned sustainability and inclusivity. And so one of the things that I'd like to comment on tonight about sustainability is that when the sustainability paradigm first came out, it was a business framing that had a triple bottom line, that it wasn't only economics bottom line, but it was environmental and social bottom line. And so over the years, sustainability has come to be seen mostly as an environmental and climate change thing, and it doesn't include a social component or a social equity component. In between the economic pillar of the triple bottom line and the social bottom line is equity. And so what I noticed about the quarterly economic report was that it was all pretty much very high-level statistics and metrics and things, but it didn't really give a sense of the person on the street or the scope of the low-income people in Santa Rosa, particularly, personally, I'm interested in the South Santa Rosa specific plan, and I'm kind of using that as my vehicle to engage in city stuff. And so, I would like to see sustainability used in the sense that the paradigm was supposed to be used, that would include social equity and not just economic and environmental metrics, and not just metrics and statistics and graphs and things, but things that include, what's life is really like for poor people in Santa Rosa. So I would like to see sustainability kind of regain its true and original meaning in city parlance, and if not, like in the quarterly economic report, that when it says sustainability, it says environmental sustainability, if that's what you really mean, and it doesn't say sustainability so that it's kind of a weasel word where you don't really know if it includes what the full paradigm was supposed to be. So I think that sustainability is a great policy framework that the city could use, because it covers all the things that we care about, but it always seems like that social equity and the social pillar is left out of policy, or it's in a place where it's not as actionable as the environment, like the gas station thing. People are really on that, but they're not on it as much for the disadvantaged communities. So that's just a general comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to speak? We will close this portion of public comment then, and we're going to jump ahead to item 16.1, which is our public hearing for the evening. It's our public hearing on the 2025 California Building Code adoption with amendments. And do we have Mr. Bliss and Mr. Osborne? Thank you both for being here. We have been looking forward to the second version of this for the last few weeks. We're ready.
Okay, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the council. Gabe Osborne, Director of Planning and Economic Development. This is the second review of this item, which is associated with adoption of our state building codes. This is actually a fairly simple process. The state of California adopts building codes on a 3-year cycle, and local jurisdictions must adopt those codes into our local codes. Before I hand this over to Mr. Bliss, who is our Chief Building Official, just a quick overview on process. Our department changes code quite often through an ordinance. The council often sees second readings through a consent item. This process is slightly different because we're adopting code by reference. So what that actually means is the code is published and lives outside of municipal codes, and we're making references to that. So the process from a presentation standpoint is a bit duplicative. As I mentioned, this item is fairly simple, and we'll cruise through the few slides. I feel like the most challenging part is likely reading the recommendations. So we apologize for all the verbiage, but that is a necessity to identify all those code sections. So with that, I will pass this on to Mr. Bliss.
Good evening. So as Director Osborne mentioned, this is the state version of our life and safety codes for the most part for private properties. So all the structures are governed by these codes, and that's Title 24. It includes the building code, the fire code, plumbing code, all the stuff that you're going to read at the end that is going to make that a mouthful. As Director Osborne said, every 3 years this happens, and go to the next slide. That one, we're good. The state California Building Standards regulations, they adopted the state codes already, so it is effective on January 1st, and we are required to enforce them already. This amendment that we have coming basically just aligns our city code with theirs. So we are allowed to make our local amendments more stringent than what the state requires, but not less. But in this case, there has been some recent legislation that has preempted us from making changes for the most part. There are a few exceptions, one of which is to continue what we've previously adopted. So that's what we're doing tonight, is just renumbering all the different things that need to be renumbered in order to correctly reference the state codes. We will be doing, did you want to take this one, or do you want me to do it?
I would be happy to, Jimmy. We do in a second phase, we'll review our all-electric codes, which are very consistent with our greenhouse gas reduction strategies. As mentioned in the previous presentation, we want to do more robust outreach with the development community to understand what that would look like. That actually really dovetails into the conversation earlier today about electrification and the need to really, from a carbon emission standpoint, look at building efficiency. So we're starting that engagement process in Q1. We anticipate that will be brought forward to the council in Q2 or Q3 of this calendar year. And to add what we saw earlier on, the fire department has covered their portion of the code, and the council has moved forward with those adoptions late in 2025.
So with that, we'd like to recommend from the Planning and Economic Development Department that the council adopt an ordinance by reference with local amendments, the 2025 California Administrative Code, California Building Code, California Residential Code, California Electrical Code, California Mechanical Code, California Plumbing Code, California Energy Code, California Wildland Urban Interface Code, California Historic Building Code, California Existing Building Code, California Referenced Standards Code, and the California Green Building Standards Code. And we are here if you would like to have any questions.
Thank you both for the second time in a few weeks. All right, please tell me there are some questions here on the dais.
I got an important question.
Seriously? Ms. Fleming, please.
Well, as this is my item, do I have to read all of the stuff when it's no? Dina says no. Yeah, I have a question. Would you be so kind as to explain one more time what the difference in doing this by reference is, or how we traditionally do it?
Absolutely. Thank you, Council Member. In our municipal code, we have specific language, and most of the local requirements are then identified in our municipal code. In this particular case, the actual code requirements live outside of our municipal code. So the state adopts a code section, and then what we do within our municipal code is we make references to that language. And the legal requirements in that particular case, we set public hearings differently. We do essentially the second reading in a different fashion. But the main difference is the core language and the requirements do not physically exist in our municipal code. They're referenced outside of the code.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Other questions? All right, we'll open this up to the public. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. I'll bring it back to the council. Any final discussion? All right, I think Ms. Fleming, you've got the motion.
Right. Well, I'll move forward the recommendations set forth by staff, and thank you very much for your work on this.
Agreed. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second by Mr. Okrepke. Madam City Clerk, we can call the vote whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Rogers and McDonald are absent. Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Banuelos?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Okrepke?
Aye.
Mayor Stapp?
Yes.
Let the record show this passes with 5 affirmative votes.
Thanks to both of you for all the work.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go back then to item 15.2, our second report for the evening, our report on the 2026 State Legislative Platform. Ms. Wood, welcome back. And I'm guessing that you want me to let you kick this one off this time?
If you don't mind, Mayor.
All right.
Thank you. All right. Madam City Clerk, do we have our presenters?
Yes, we do. They just are being promoted to panelists in Zoom. There you see them.
Thank you very much. All right. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Our next item here is our 2026 State Legislative Platform. Joining us virtually, we have Dane Hutchings and Ethan Nagler with California Public Policy Group, which is our state lobbying firm. And before I jump into it, I'm going to pass the mic to Madam City Attorney to discuss some procedural issues.
Thank you very much. As you know, Councilmember Okrepke has recused from a portion of this item, and he has left the chambers. The process that we're going to use in order to allow him to participate in the balance of this platform is we're going to have staff do a full presentation on the entire item. Councilmember Okrepke is free to watch, and I believe he is watching the presentation in the city manager's office, so he will have seen the full presentation. We will then go ahead and take questions on just the portion about which the council member needed to recuse, and I assume you will flag that in that portion in the staff report. Then we'll do public comment on just that slice of the platform. Bring it back. Council can do its deliberations and take whatever action it chooses to take on that portion of the platform. We will then invite Councilmember Okrepke back to the dais. And Mr. Mayor, I would suggest at that point you take questions from all council members on the balance of the platform. We'll do public comment on that portion and then bring it back to the council to take action or not on the balance of the platform. If you have any questions, I'm happy to chime in as we go along.
Thank you both.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam City Attorney. Every year, the City Council adopts a state legislative platform, much like the federal one, that outlines the city's state policy and project priorities. This platform provides guidance and direction to city staff and to our state representatives about those priorities. And at this time, I will turn the presentation over to CPPG so they can provide some highlights from last year and propose changes for the upcoming year.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Dane Hutchings with California Public Policy Group. Great to see you this evening. So looking at the 2025 highlights, we engaged or had over 530 touch points, meaning that we were either advocating on your behalf, connecting with your staff, analyzing bills, sort of all of the above. It's one of the key performance indicators that we like to track to let you know that we are continuously working on your behalf year-round. This is both encompasses all of the touch points between our grants team and our lobbying team. There was more than 910 pieces of legislation tracked on behalf of the city. We did secure approximately 62% success rate on the legislation we engaged on. One of the key things I wanted to highlight, and this was, a big shout out to your staff, but with respect to AB 306 and some of the reach code issues, we were able to negotiate directly with Assembly leadership to get a Santa Rosa specific amendment in there that made the reach code suspensions a little bit more workable for the city. Despite some of the challenges that were highlighted in the federal presentation, we were able to secure $6 million in state and federal funding this year from local cybersecurity grant program, 3.8 million in hazard mitigation grant program, 213,000 for an OTS grant, and then Proposition 47, nearly 7 million to support the in-response program, which is really we saw it in action last time we were there, and it's just a phenomenal program. So really happy to be a part of that. And I'll note that since the time we've been in contract with the city, we've helped secure $28 million in total grants secured and over $12 million in state direct earmarks. And so really proud of that work. In fact, to help support that Hearn Avenue station. Next slide, please. So as we look ahead and note that things have shifted a bit since the preparation of the slide versus really the governor's state of the state, but really we were pretty right on the nose here with respect to what we're looking ahead towards. Local government revenue is going to, of course, be under attack. In our assessment, we're already starting to see pieces of legislation that go to cap, eliminate, defer, otherwise control our ability to assess any types of fees associated with development. There's going to be a ton of housing and land use issues. However, the conversation has maybe shifted a bit from how to we sort of supersize and fast track the actual construction versus over the past 6 years, we've seen a lot of it on sort of planning and local mandates. There will be quite a bit more of CEQA cleanup. There was about a 300-page CEQA reform jammed into the budget last year and passed very, very quickly. And so now they're going through and they're going to be cleaning up some of those things this year. And then, I think just more broadly, we're going to be seeing this is, sort of election year politics. And what we mean by that is really some of the election year politics are going to drive a lot of the policies we're seeing in governmental operations, transparency, affordability, and things of that nature. So lots to come for this year ahead. And I think the platform puts us in a great position to engage where it makes the most sense. Next slide. And so with respect to sort of the process and strategy here, we gear our platform statements really around the council's goal setting. Of course, we acknowledge sort of the rapidly changing things that are happening federally, which then precipitates down to how the state's going to react. And then, where do we come in the middle of this? Oftentimes, and as I think was eloquently stated before, cities are often caught in the middle between some of these, federal and state policies that are sort of going after one another. And throughout the process, we did incorporate feedback from council, department heads, and city manager's office at the time. And with that, I will kick it over to my colleague, Ethan Nagler, to highlight the proposed changes. Ethan.
Thank you, Dane, and good evening, Mayor and council members. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you tonight. I'll be going over the specific statements that are recommended to be added or modified in the 2026 legislative platform. The existing platform is very strong, very comprehensive, and so the recommended changes this year are minor. And as Dane mentioned, we worked really closely with your staff to make sure that your feedback was incorporated. So first up, in the disaster prevention and mitigation space, there's a nationwide effort to better identify flood risk. And so these new platform statements on this slide aim to address flood risk in the city, as well as mitigation, planning, and recovery of floods, and to also address the financial and physical impacts of flooding on city residents in terms of insurance affordability. These statements also include ensuring evacuation infrastructure is safe and accessible, especially for seniors. And these are all support statements. Next slide, please. So again, this statement is addressing the flood risk to the city and ensuring that those newly updated flood maps are taken into consideration. For this statement, there's just a small wording modification, and we changed such as to including here in this statement. And so this is a support statement as well. Next slide, please. So in the environment and climate space, for this platform statement, there is the addition of any subsequent legislation to the end of the sentence to ensure that the city is covered if there's any future legislation related to Senate Bill 1383, which was a law from 2016, which mandates that local governments provide organic collection services. And it also requires mandatory collection for residents and businesses. And this is also a support statement. Next slide, please. In the public safety space, what was previously a single platform statement has just been split into two separate statements for clarity and consistency's sake. And these are both support statements. Next slide, please. In the water quality and supply space, we added this statement because water systems are complex, they're expensive, and they're vulnerable to damage from certain consumer products. And a consistent theme that we've seen in the legislature for several years has been to address these types of products. So the city is now positioned on this issue. And this is also a support statement. And as I said, pretty minor changes this year. And so I will now turn it back to Misty. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ethan. So as indicated by Madam City Attorney, CIRO, the Communications and Intergovernmental Relations Office, is recommending that the council take two separate actions tonight. So first, we recommend that you adopt resolution number 1 before Vice Mayor Okrepkie joins us, and that covers just the disaster prevention and response section. And then after the Vice Mayor rejoins us, we recommend that the council adopt resolution number 2, which is the remainder of the platform. This concludes the staff presentation, and we are available to answer any questions the council may have. Thank you.
Thank you all for both the presentation and all the great work behind it. Okay, let's bring it back to council then for questions on specifically related to the policy proposal related to wildfire insurance. Any questions from council?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. It's actually everything having to do with disaster prevention, recovery, hazard mitigation, and resiliency. That entire section will be taken before Councilmember Okrepkie comes back.
That's helpful. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, any questions in that section I should have added? Seeing none, all right, we'll call for public comment on that portion of the item on the disaster prevention and recovery, hazard mitigation, resiliency. Any members of the public wish to make comment on that section? Okay. We'll bring it back to council then. I'll look for a motion, and I believe that's Mr. Alvarez for that portion.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I read the resolution, I want to thank Natalie Rogers for taking my glasses and not returning them yet. Resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Rosa adopting certain state policy priorities within the 2026 state legislative platform and waive further reading of the text.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Banuelos gets credit for the second. So we will vote on this portion of the item.
Okay, Councilmember Rogers and McDonald are absent. Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Banuelos?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Okrepkie has recused, and Mayor Stapp.
Yes.
Let the record show this passes with 4 affirmative votes.
Thank you, and I believe we can invite Mr. Okrepkie to join us once again. Vice Mayor, welcome back. So now, Madam City Attorney, if I'm correct, we can call for, or we can have council discuss the remainder of the item. Is that correct? All right, questions on the remainder of the item? Again, looking to my colleagues. I'm seeing heads, nothing from our vice mayor as well. I'm seeing heads nodding no. Okay, we'll throw this open to public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on the remainder of the item? Again, seeing no. All right. Well, actually, before I call for the motion, I'll just thank CPPG, Dane. Thank you to the entire team. You've obviously done great work for the city, and you're focused on the issues that are top priority for us. So thank you very much. And Misty, thank you for coordinating this today. With that, all right, Mr. Alvarez, you're on again.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Rosa adopting the 2026 City of Santa Rosa State Legislative Platform and waive further reading of the text.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Ms. Fleming is our second. Madam City Clerk, you can call the motion or call the vote whenever.
Thank you. Councilmember Rogers and McDonald are absent. Councilmember Fleming? Councilmember Benuelos?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Okrepke?
Aye.
Mayor Stapp?
Yes.
Let the record show this passes with 5 affirmative votes.
Thank you very much. All right, unless I'm forgetting something, we are at our second public comment on non-agenda matters now. Are there any members of the public who'd like to comment on any items that were not on the agenda? Speak now or forever hold your peace. I see no one moving to the podium, so we will close that item and we are officially adjourned. Thank you, everyone.